All right. Well, since the oh, hello.
What you doing there, Yorgos?
Yeah. All right. Well, since with that, I believe everyone is here, so we will go ahead and I will go ahead and call to order the regularly scheduled board meeting for Thursday, April 23rd, 2020. We'll start off with roll call. Vice President Pizzati.
Here.
Trustee Alcala.
Here.
Trustee Wong.
Present.
And Clerk Kirby Gonzalez will not be joining us this evening. Uh-oh. Okay. So, all right. And actually, before we even get started, I would like to, and if it's inappropriate, so what, I don't particularly care, but I will go ahead and do it anyway. But I would like to extend our condolences to Clerk Kirby Gonzalez and her family on the passing of her father. And just know that we are thinking about you and wishing you all the best.
Thank you, President Jackson, for making those comments.
Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and we'll move down to D, Association Reports, WSTA.
President Jackson, I'm wondering if we can approve the agenda as it is.
You're right. Yes. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, approval of the agenda, of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'm sorry, this was Trustee Alcala moving.
Okay, so
Right.
moved by
I
Trustee
second.
Alcala, seconded by Trustee Wong. And again, since we are online, all of our votes need to be roll call votes. So we'll go ahead and start with Vice President Pizzati.
Aye.
Trustee Wong.
Aye.
Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So the agenda for tonight is approved. Now let's go ahead and move on to the association reports. WSTA report. If there's anyone from WSTA online.
President Jackson, I did not receive any comments from President Buse.
Okay. Do we have anything from CSEA?
Actually, sorry, WSTA, can you just give me 1 second just to make sure nothing was sent to me? I want to triple check. Mr. Buse did send a message. I can read it right now if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
It says, "Good evening. During this challenging time, we are grateful for the collaborative approach we all share as we make the transition to the brave new world of distance learning. Our recent parades, Chromebook distribution, the ongoing lunch provision, and other such efforts have reminded me of how good we truly are at working together to support our students and families and their families. Our association has also been in positive contact with the district as recent negotiations have shown. Thanks to both teams for the hard and challenging work. We appreciate being able to work in our various capacities for the benefit of all. Sincerely, Mike Buse, President, West Sacramento Teachers Association." And I apologize, he just sent it, so apologize for the lateness.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for that. Okay, do we have a report from CSEA?
President Jackson, I have not received anything from President Gondara.
Okay. Alrighty, then shall go ahead and move along. And bear with me. I'm shuffling. I'm doing the 2 computer dance tonight. So, all right. So with that, public comments. Actually, I have received 3 public comments for tonight's agenda. And let me pull those up. Okay. All right. Our first public comment tonight comes from Liz Bagdadzian. It reads, "Good afternoon, President Jackson. I'm looking over the agenda for tonight's board meeting. I have public comment relative to the consent agenda, which I would like to read into record. Item G10, approval of the agreement for bond counsel services, Parker and Colbert. I understand the fee for services is not considered earned until the bonds are actually sold. Item G11, approval of the agreement between TBWH for bond strategic political strategy, $50,000 through the end of October and month to month afterwards for $6,500 a month. While I understand that these bond related items were put into motion prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, I feel that moving forward with the expenditures bonds is not prudent. Given the mass decimation of the economy and the staggering effects on our community, spending such funds, no matter what pot they are taken from, and asking this community to further indebt themselves with a new bond seems tone deaf. Yes, this pandemic will pass. However, the economic fallout will reverberate for an indefinite amount of time. I do not believe that the community will respond favorably to an ask on tax themselves when their own economic outlook is bleak, or certainly cannot and will not support an additional bond during this climate, especially when we continue to pay for 3. Respectfully, Liz Bagdazian." Okay. Our second public comment is from Ms. Pat Flint regarding distance learning. I applaud distance learning. I applaud the district's efforts to feed our students during this time of COVID-19 public health crisis. Carrie Penna and her crew are doing an outstanding job. I also applaud the distribution of Chromebooks. My concerns are Chromebooks require Wi-Fi. I understand the district purchased very few hotspots, that the district is relying on Wave, who so graciously offered service for $10 a month. Most of these in need are essential workers. Making appointments is difficult. For some, $10 is a lot of money. Does the district know how many students are utilizing distance learning online? My other concern is that public education material be equitable acts across the board for all students. Each grade level should be receiving the same materials per grade. District task force by grade level driven, not totally teacher driven. At the middle school and high school levels, department task force driven. What are our educational consultants contributing during this crisis? What are the teacher coaches doing? Some teachers may need help learning how to teach using Zoom, etc. Consistency, quality, and a little other stuff our creative teachers can throw into the mix. At home science projects, art projects, etc. I know most, if not all, teachers are contacting and staying in touch with their students and parents. They are doing a great job, but guidance and leadership are so important right now. This social distancing is hard on everyone. I know the State Department of Ed is working on some things. Other districts are way ahead of us. Let's step up and shine. Our students deserve the best. Bond expenditures. I would suggest this expense is not a necessary expenditure at this time. Number one, COVID-19 has rendered our economy in an unknown situation. Number two, you cannot afford to match the funds necessary to utilize the bond funds. Number three, the governor will be revising the state budget in May. It is unknown how educational funding will be expended to school districts. Number four, the state bond for schools did not pass. Number five, there are too many property owners that have lost their jobs. Staffing and budget. You are not sure how long distance learning will be necessary. There are no guarantees how the state budget will affect your budget. Will layoffs need to be necessary? You will need to look at scenarios of what ifs, especially now. Should you consider a hiring freeze for a short period of time? Do not put us further into debt. Be smart. You're in deficit spending as we speak. Staff, students, and parents need you to be financially responsible. That is from Miss Pat Flint. Our third public comment this evening comes from Miss Danny Langford, that she would like to be read in record as well. I want to start by saying that Carrie Penna and her staff have done a great job helping get food out there for kids that really need it. Is our distance learning curriculum uniform across each grade level, like my grandkids is down in Arizona, or each school site or teacher doing their own thing? I certainly that this is the case. This is case so that it's the same across the board, and then the teachers can add in their own creative skills for their particular age group and subject. Are they utilizing things like Zoom to majestic contact with their students to help keep them engaged? Do you have a plan in place for social distancing when school resumes? Just a reminder, we have enough school sites to help spread kids out if that becomes necessary. I'm also concerned about all students having access to the internet for their Chrome notebooks. While I've seen it mentioned that $10 connections through Wave is available, I am concerned that some people cannot afford even that, especially right now with COVID. Next, as far as moving forward with the bond, I feel it will be money wasted that could be used in ways that will be needed when the district reopens. Common sense tells me that the majority of people in our community will not be in a position to pay for another bond right now. With so many losing jobs and income, it will add insult to injury at this time. And while I'm fully aware that of what was passed before the COVID outbreak and shutdown, at this point, it needs to be reevaluated. It would be simply throwing money down the drain to pay 2 contracts for moving forward with. Lastly, when the Fallbrook campus is ready, as I've heard from neighbors in that neighborhood, that construction seems to have stopped. Also, being that the BOC committee, we were told there isn't enough money left to finish the build out on that site. So what are we doing to fill the gap in finances, especially since the state did not pass? I understand so much is up in the air until the dust settles from the COVID storm, but hope you will have some idea of how to move forward to finish that project. Sincerely, Miss Danny Langford. Okay, I will double check my email before I close it out, but those are the 3 submissions for public comment that I've received for this evening.
President Jackson, this is Ruth. If you don't mind forwarding those to me so I can have them in full for the minutes, please.
Yes, ma'am, I will do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. F, information and discussion items. F1, grading during the COVID-19 school closure. Dr. Parsons.
Good evening, President Jackson, Vice President Pizzotti, Board of Trustees, Cabinet, staff, and community. I'd like to give you a little bit of context, since this is an information item versus an action item. When we saw that we were going to have school closures, we started looking at our board policy and administrative regulation on grading. It gives us very little flexibility. So the first option was to create an addendum to the board policy and administrative regulation. We evaluated the process and we moved on to going, now maybe we should do a resolution for the board. And so we were, that's the way we were going to go. And then we found board policy 2210, which allows, it's in the transmittal, it allows the superintendent under emergencies to work with the board president to schedule a review of the action that we're going to take at a regular board meeting. So what we did was look through the lens of equity. The school closure and shelter-in-place orders due to COVID-19 is defined as such an emergency that requires us to modify our grading. Educational Services has received input and consulted with the West Sacramento Teachers Association, 6 through 8 department chairs, 9 through 12 department chairs, and all of site leadership. In fact, like Mr. Buse said, our collaboration with WSTA has been fantastic, and there's going to be a joint communication between the district and WSTA that's going to be going out, that's going to talk about the grading. And so this is the following recommendation is grades TK through 5. Students will receive a narrative report card based on progress towards standards. We looked at current board policy, and they have a rubric in board policy that basically talks about progress towards standards, and talking to WSTA and some of the teachers in TK5, they thought it would be much more beneficial to give a narrative report card for this last trimester. Grades 6 through 8, third quarter, because we stopped in mid-third quarter, teachers will calculate the student grades by using the grade that was earned when the school closed on March 16th. However, we extended the grading window to April 30th for teachers to post grades and allow makeup work if necessary. Number 3, grades 6 through 8 on fourth quarter, students will receive credit, no credit for their distance learning work that is based on standards aligned learning. Number 4, grades 9 through 12, second term, first grading period. That is the period that during that period is when we closed our schools. They have posted the grades that students earned at the time of the school closure on March 16th. And if necessary, teachers have allowed student makeup work to go into that grade. Number 5, grades 9 through 12, second term, second grading period. Remember, on a 4x4, that is like a semester grade that we've just entered into. Students will receive a credit or no credit for their distance learning work that's based on standards aligned learning. Similar concerns came up around school graduation requirements, because we want to make sure that every student in our district is held harmless due to the emergency closure of schools. So it is recommended that we align our graduation requirements for the class of 2020 with the California Department of Education requirements. And I listed out what the requirements are, and the 2 biggies are 3 years of English is what the state recommends. Our district has 4 years of English, and then 2 years of mathematics is what the state requires. Our district requires 3 years of mathematics. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that students who are on the cusp, because like I said, this is a semester grade, we want to make sure that their 4th year of English and their 4th year of mathematics, the 3rd year of mathematics does not hold them back from graduation. So we are recommending to go with CDE's minimum requirement only for the class of 2020. Moreover, we're recommending that our district waive the community service hour requirements for the class of 2020 because they're not out in the community doing their community service. We will continue to review the student transcripts for the class of 2021 to ensure that students are held harmless because of the 11th grade requirements as well. So once our term is over, we will be checking transcripts to see how our 11th graders did in distance learning, so they are held harmless. And lastly, as the board knows, UCCSU system has agreed to hold students harmless for their admission requirements by waiving letter grades to the A through G course requirements for admission into the fall of 2020, and the 11th grade standardized test requirements for admissions into the fall of 2021. And so, as I said, we're looking through the lens of equity to ensure that all students are held harmless because of our school closures. Mr. Pizzotti.
I think President Jackson.
Yeah,
I think
through the
President
chair
Jackson
for
has
me.
to. Yeah, up to President Jackson. President Jackson, if you want to facilitate.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I had a quick question when I was looking at the TK through 5. It says students will receive a narrative report card based on progress towards standards. Now, I can only go from what we're experiencing right now. And I'm wondering, how do you develop a narrative when the only assignments that are being turned in effectively are the daily writing assignments?
That's a great question. Currently on our TK5 report cards is a comment section. And that is what we feel is that the feedback from the teachers are much more important than a rubric score. And so talking to the teachers in WSTA, we could have just said comment section only, but it's really to support our teachers in giving more in-depth narrative of how the kids are doing in distance learning. Did that answer your question?
No, it doesn't, because it's only one subject that's being assessed. And there's no math that we're able to turn in except for work that's being done on Prodigy or Lexia. That's the only other thing that's being monitored is Lexia, Prodigy, and the writing that we're turning in. So we're not turning in math assignments. We're not, doing any of that. So my question is, how do you assess that and make a narrative, where someone is, and you can say basically for 3/4 of the year they were at this point, but from this point forward, you can only assess on writing. You can only make it. You can only make a narrative about the writing.
I was going to jump in. Sorry. Here. Oh, okay. If I can just jump in for just a second here. I would say that isn't accurate, that people are not turning in math assignments. I'm wondering if families, if students are not turning in standards assignments that they would have been doing this semester during this time, every student would have been doing math. Every student would have been doing reading. And those are the assignments and writing. Those are the assignments that are standards, that are to be standards aligned and to be turned in for teacher feedback throughout the week. And what our greatest concern, and actually we heard this in public comment, that the inconsistency of teachers, if that is a concern, then we will definitely part to help address that and align that, because our standards-based instruction before COVID-19 has been worked on for the past 2 years in regards to grade levels, in regards to content areas, in the rigorous curriculum design work. And so all teachers have that as a base and foundation of work that's to be done per semester, per trimester, and by standards. So now I'll mute myself and have Director Moisage, who has his hands directly in this.
Sorry, thank you.
I see exactly. I get you.
Yeah, thank you. So what I wanted to add to that discussion is a narrative comment section gives a lot more flexibility, because there are some students in different positions in terms of what work they're turning in, and so the narrative allows a teacher that flexibility to meet the student where they are at that point. So that's the benefit of that, is so that's why we went that way, because we knew there would be some places where you might have different issues with different families, different connectivities in terms of what people can actually turn in. And so we thought a narrative box would be the best way and give the most flexibility for a teacher to comment for a student.
And I get that, Stan. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we're doing the assignment. Yes, we're being asked to do the assignment. We're not being asked to turn that assignment in terms of math. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I understand.
The only math that we're being asked to do and turn in or can be checked is Prodigy. So,
Understood.
so I get that
Understood.
you can look at that, but I could, in theory, I could take a picture and send it to the teacher, but the teacher's not asking for that.
So I just want to also remind everyone too that that could change. Remember, this is the ending grade. This isn't a daily grade that you would get. So some of what you said could be changing as the weeks go by, because this would be a grade at the end. So there could be more fade in.
And I get that, but how do you know unless you're seeing it, and you're not seeing it?
Yeah, I'm saying that there might be a better back and forth as we go forward, so that they can see it. And I'm going to look into, and I will look into that directly too, because you know that there are some gaps in different places, so I will look into that one directly.
Okay, Trustee Wong. Go ahead, Jackie. I just called on you.
Oh, you were muted, I think. Thank you, President Jackson. One, I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work that you all engaged in with WSTA to get to this point. I think that from that equity lens, everybody has different access to broadband and submission and all that. So I appreciate this. I am wondering, how does this also apply to middle college?
Actually, Middle College is working very closely with Sac City because Sac City has chosen not to do credit, no credit. So they're working with their professors on how they're going to do it. So yes, on the graduation requirements, but no on the grading. They're still working, and Mr. O'Neill, Principal O'Neill, is working with the dean at the college to make sure there's equity in their learning as well.
Great, because I know that the pathway is a little bit different there, and I had some parents just wondering how that worked out. So that's hopefully you can follow up by email as to what that might look like for middle college.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be lovely. And I'm wondering, did I hear correctly that the state this is just a pet peeve of my mind. It's not a CDE standard. It's actually a statutory minimum requirement for graduation. So the statutes, the requirements laid out are actually statutory ed code. And so I am wondering, did I hear correctly that this would also apply to the class of 2021?
Not at this point. At this point, it's 2020, and then Principal Billingsley and her staff will be going through transcripts during the summer and in the fall to see where we can support our juniors, to see how this last term actually worked out for the students. And so then we'll revisit if they need to waive the hours for community service, and if there's any issues around meeting the graduation requirements as laid out. Because at the junior year, as you know, most students are on track with our normal WUSD graduation requirements. So we just need to look at how many students have not met those requirements at that time.
Okay. And the other question I had, oh my gosh, it just escaped me. But I just want to be clear for the board that this is not pass, no pass. It's credit, no credit. So if help me if I'm misunderstanding, that credit, no credit is D level work versus pass, no pass policy is C level work. Is that correct?
I think that was a huge discussion, by the way, saying pass, no pass, credit, no credit. Because at the 6-8 level in the TK5, credit is not as important as passing the class. But we chose to do one terminology, which is credit, no credit. You were correct. That is a D- and above.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that that's what we're adopting at the 9 through 12 level, and so and 6 through 8. So at the junior high and high school level. And can you help me understand the reason behind that versus PNP?
Um, as I said, at the high school level, they look at credit, no credit versus pass, no pass, because credit is so important at the high school level. And at the 6-8 level, it is not as important to, they don't get, it's not about credit, it's about passing the class, because they do get moved on to the next class. So at the high school level, we had to talk about, do we do pass, no pass, or credit, no credit? And after Principal Billingsley met with her department chairs, they chose to make it credit, no credit.
Yeah, but for transparency, can you help us understand why?
Because they're not able to give, because distance learning is very new for people. They were trying to figure out on a rubric, how would they do a D grade, because it is a new process for them, and that's why they chose, let's just do credit, no credit at this time, because passing to the next level is a D. So they chose to do credit, no credit.
No, the opposite.
Yeah.
You had just said credit, no credit was D minus. Pass, no pass was C minus. Just wanted to, as a point of clarification, that we're doing a D minus level work is what you're proposing to, or you're providing information that that's the discussion.
That's correct.
So if I can jump in right now. Okay, so if I can jump in right now, these are really, really good questions and important for Washington Unified to define for our own district. I believe Davis Joint Unified uses pass, no pass, but they are allowing D minus as a pass. The rubric that Yolo County Office of Education looked at, which was Riverside County Office of Education, they clarified the difference for their county. They use pass, no pass for 7% as pass. So 69% is no pass. Credit, no credit, credit is D minus in that particular county. And so I think it's important to have these discussions, and these are great questions to clarify. My understanding is that our agreement in the discussions with the department chairs is D minus will be considered passing, so that students will be held harmless. Because of this last quarter, students may not be able to improve their grade in this because we're on a 4x4 block schedule. So once we went into school closure, that started our second term, second semester. So that in the lens of the most equitable manner, because of the gap of access of internet, of support on the device of home, support to the connection of the teachers. Having credit, no credit is going to be the least harmful to our students, and it means the same to the UC and CSU systems for accepting that they have gone through the course, at least for this graduating class of 2020.
Okay.
I hope that's a little.
It does a little bit, but I'm going to talk about this from a couple different perspectives, because I know there's parents in the district who are very concerned with their kids getting pass fail grades, credit no credit grades, not only in terms of admissions, because trust me, I pulled in some favors to get some questions about what the credit no credit pass fail thing is going to look like, not only for the seniors for this class, but also for the students moving forward. Because I've received a couple of emails from parents in the district who are concerned about their children receiving pass fail grades, and how that was going to affect them eligibility wise for the NCAA, things like that. Now, NCAA, and I think just to kind of keep things consistent, I think I personally take issue with us more or less lowering the standards of what's considered to be a passing grade versus a non-passing grade, out of the sake of in the sake of equity, being equitable. Being equitable does not mean that we need to lower our standards as far as what's a passing grade, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion. I think we can still maintain and hold kids accountable for quality work while still maintaining that acceptable level of passing a course. With the understanding, let's take it for example, for the NCAA considers a pass-fail in a course to be basically is C+ work. Okay, and there for our graduating seniors for this year in particular, they are allowing kids because we're not the only school who's going to be issuing pass-fail grades. But if a student receives a pass-fail grade and they receive a pass, it will basically be considered point-wise in terms of their eligibility. It will be used calculated as though it was a C+, which means they get the 2.3, which the 2.3 means that as long as they have a 2.3 average in all their core classes, they are deemed to be eligible, or what was used to be called a qualifier out of high school. Okay, for sports and for athletics. Now, if we go, I think if we could potentially be harming our students in the future if we lower that standard, and then it becomes public knowledge that, well, in Washington Unified, a pass was D work versus C work. That, in my opinion, could potentially come back and bite our students in the rear down the road, just because we're not maintaining that standard. I'm all for being equitable. I hope everyone understands that. But at the same time, I'm also about keeping kids accountable and maintaining the high quality standards that we've established. Because in this district particularly, I think the teachers in this district, Superintendent Luna, you and your staff have worked way too hard to bring up the academic standards and bring up the academic requirements in this district to now lower them for the sake of issuing pass-fail grades. That's my personal
credit,
opinion.
no credit.
Or credit, no credit.
No credit, no. Versus pass-fail. Yeah.
Well, personally, I think it should be. Personally, I would prefer pass-fail because then it keeps us consistent with all the other upper continuing education bodies, NCAA, UCs, CSUs. That keeps us consistent with their standards and with their guidelines, which ultimately that's where we want our kids to aspire to.
President Jackson, may I add something?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So our information and the guidelines we received was that credit is going to equal the same amount as a C or above as a student would get on a typical year for their A through G. So anybody receiving a credit mark will have the equivalency of what they need for A through G. That was the guidelines that we received from UC CSUs.
Director Moises, you cut out a little bit, so I only heard every other word, so it was hard to follow. I don't know if it's where you are in your room or your home, or I apologize, didn't really catch that.
Let me try one more time.
Okay, is anybody going to talk?
Director Moises, were you?
This is Trustee Alcala. I've been listening to this very carefully. So if they do a credit, no credit, and President Jackson brought up an important point, and they're applying to colleges, say some Ivy League colleges. Normally, the student has made top grades in his classes or her classes. How will that look on admissions? I mean, are they going to realize that we've had to change the grading policy? I mean, is that going to be taken into consideration by these institutions?
My understanding is yes, that is the case. Everything that I've heard from the people that I know that I've been in communication with, that is the case, that they are proceeding with leniency, particularly with this senior class when it comes to pass fail grades, credit no credit grades. That's the direction. Their direction is they're going to proceed with leniency with this senior class, with the understanding that obviously there's going to have to be probably some concessions made for students for the next 4 years moving forward, for particularly for our freshmen and sophomores. Let me, and real quick, Vice President, I see you're going to read this for you guys too. This is a link that I was given, and this is where I'm getting some of my information from. It says, for schools with NCAA approved core courses, how will the Eligibility Center approach those schools that issue pass-fail grades in spring and summer of 2020 due to school closures? Okay, this is directly from the NCAA. For NCAA approved core courses completed in the spring and summer of 2020 that have been issued a grade of pass, the Eligibility Center will apply the credit earned in those courses toward core course requirements and the student certification. If the student's core course GPA would increase by assessing the value of 2.30, this value will be assessed to the past courses. However, if the student's core course GPA would decrease by including the 2.30 value for past courses, the student's core course GPA will be calculated based only on courses with assigned letter grades from other available terms. Credit from those courses will still be applied toward the student's course requirements. So basically, the NCAA is trying to make sure students are held harmless too. So for example, if I'm a straight A student and have been a straight A student, but now all of a sudden I have a pass on my course for my AP history class because due to COVID-19, well, obviously that 2.3 would bring down my core course GPA. And since that would have brought down my core course GPA, that pass point will not be calculated into my core course GPA. Whereas if I was a student where that 2.3 would have boosted my GPA, my core course GPA, then they would include that 2.3 into that calculation for that particular student. So that's kind of the NCAA's way of kind of trying to hold students harmless, which again, it was just, I would be very cautious about us deviating from the requirement of obtaining a pass for that specific reason, because I think we're potentially opening ourselves up, not only ourselves but our students up, for disappointment later on down the road. Should say, well, your district, a pass wasn't the same equivalent. Vice President Pozzati.
Yeah, I was just wondering, was the option discussed of providing students with a letter grade if they wanted it versus
that was going to be my next comment too.
Yeah, versus the idea of saying, hey, yeah, I'm fine with a credit, no credit, or pass, no pass. Because some kids, what if you're right at and you're looking for athletics next year and you're looking to go to a college and play ball of whatever kind, and you need a letter grade of, say, an A in a class to get you above that 2.3, because that 2.3 isn't necessarily going to get you above where you need to be. So you need the extra.
Yeah.
You need those extra classes. You need to do good this last quarter.
Talk a little bit to that.
Ruth, did you want to read the comment that
Yeah.
Director Moisich had? I think might help.
Or Stan, you can go ahead and go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
From Director Moisich. From CDE guidelines, colleges have agreed to accept credit, no credit, or pass, fail grading where districts have decided to use it for A through G courses and other courses without impact on grade point average. Should I read it again?
No, I think we heard you.
It's in the chat for everybody.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just so you guys know, it's in the chat. I posted that in the chat because I was having trouble with audio.
yeah.
You're still having a little bit of trouble with audio.
I think that's on your end, Jackie.
Director Boyce.
But my sentiments are the exact same as Vice President Pizzotti's. That was actually going to be my question, or my proposal as well. Is there a way could we possibly have the pass or pass, fail, credit, no credit option being the default? However, if parents and students say, "Hey, you know what? We would actually prefer to receive a letter grade," could they then opt into receiving a letter grade in lieu of the pass, fail, credit, no credit alternative? Now, again, maybe that will put an undue burden on our teachers. I get that. And if that's the case, maybe that's not a viable option. But I think, I think most people would be okay with receiving, would be okay with the pass, fail, credit, no credit. But then there's probably a good handful or two of students that would like to have that option of being able to receive that letter grade. Is that something that it was either one that discussed, or is that something that's that is even still a possibility to do?
President Jackson,
Yes.
I can tell you that some of our neighboring districts in Yolo County, the two smaller districts, Esparto and Winters, are considering a mixed blend like that.
Okay.
I don't know though, if those discussions were had, so I'll let Director Moisage and Assistant Superintendent Parsons weigh in on those discussions.
Right. Real quick, before you guys do that, though, my point would be this: is that obviously I think we would need to set some parameters as far as just like you would be if you're at UC Davis. You can't go into the final exam and say, "Hey, oh, by the way, I want to get a grade, or I want to take this pass fail." No. Parents and students would need to make a clear declaration very soon whether or not they wanted their child to receive a letter grade in lieu of a pass, fail, credit, no credit type of a grade. So that would be my thing.
President Jackson, I think what Director Moisage and I should do is go back to Principal Billingsley, where she can have that discussion with our department chairs and look at the pros and cons of doing something like that, because it is different. Instruction, distance learning, they're not going to school, 5 days a week and being in class for 90 minutes. And I don't know how the assessments are happening with our teachers yet, because we just started distance learning. So I'm more concerned about how are they assessing students in a distance learning format. So if you can give us a couple days to talk to Principal Billingsley and the department chairs and see if that's a viable option.
Yeah,
I think that would be great. I mean, because honestly, I would imagine that there's probably that most people will probably be okay with the credit, no credit option. But I'll be honest with you, I am firmly against lowering the standards of what it takes to receive that. It absolutely under no circumstances should it be D- type work. That is to me, that is completely unacceptable. And like I said, and for the reasons that I stated earlier, you guys have worked too hard and have put too many things in place to raise the standard and to raise the reputation of our schools, to then diminish that by lowering that standard.
I totally understand your comments. Absolutely.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
President Jackson. So I just wanted to read into the record for those who may be listening, the comments by Director Moisage, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, that was just, so the consistency was discussed. However, there was concern about, the hybrid was discussed. However, or grades, I'm assuming. Director Moisage, you can say yes or no. However, there was concern about consistency since these are official records, and in regards to doing a hybrid grading system. Oh, I didn't read
That's
that.
where it
Maybe
ends.
Okay, that's where it ends. And so just wanted to read that. I think that having been somewhat of a custodian of record in a large district in the past, is that I lean towards the option of credit, no credit, and pass, no pass, given this pandemic, right? I do have a question maybe for Director Moisage or Dr. Parsons, is that in the past, being NCAA aside, were students able to meet the requirements and graduate if they say met credit, no credit, or did they have to take the course again? Remind me, I don't recall. So like we created our standards and say they had a D minus. Were they able to still receive a diploma? Because I think we're talking about two different things: receiving a diploma and graduating, and NCAA and college requirements. Can you remind me what our practice was in the past?
Sure.
Or
So
type it in the
for,
box. Yeah. Or
yeah.
I hear you now, though.
C and above is what you need. Okay, good. C and above is what you would need for A through G status. So to be NCAA eligible, you would want to meet your A through G rigor. So you would have to be C and above for that piece. However, to graduate the course and receive credit, to meet your graduation credit requirements, a D minus would suffice to get credit for the course.
Maybe somebody else heard him, but was it so to get the
No,
diploma?
I heard him.
Credit,
Yeah.
Credit, no credit was okay. Is that affirmative? If you were not trying to meet A through G standards, out of curiosity, for our diploma standards.
For our diploma status, for our diplomas, if they receive a D, they pass the class, they get credit for the class. So yes, they graduate.
Okay, gotcha. So that's why I think I lean towards this is not just about college and college NCAA. I think that credit, no credit, it seems to be consistent with the practice in the past about meeting our graduation standards. But I also think I agree with President Jackson that there should be an option of maybe pass, no pass, and credit, no credit, since the colleges, and again, this is for discussion and direction, I'm assuming, since the UC's CSU system, and I'm assuming Ivy Leagues and private are looking at pass, no pass.
That's correct, and that's why I think Mr. Director Moisage and myself need to go back to Principal Billingsley and discuss this more with her and see what the pros and cons are with our department chairs on doing that. Consistency is going to be very important, that we're supporting our kids. So we will look at that.
I get. I'm sorry if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Kobe.
Sorry. And I get that, and I have no problem with doing the hybrid in that sense. I just feel like for some of those kids that are really excelling, it does them a disservice in not saying, hey, I know this is a weird time, but even in this weird time, you produced excellent work. You deserve the letter grade that you've earned. And why shouldn't we say, yes, you have an option of that grade? You can opt into it. That's all you have to do is opt in. I'm doing my Italian hand thing again, but you have the ability to opt into it, but at the same time, there's also these other options here if you choose, because you're uncertain about this distance learning and how it may affect you. Like, I understand there's absolutely a concern about making sure we have a requirement and a standard for graduation. And then there's also the standard for A through G classes. But then there's also those kids that are excelling. And I think it does a disservice. The guys and girls that are getting, a 4.2 or better may want to continue that, 4.2 and make it look very good throughout their transcripts. And it seems like we do have the ability to do that for them. I mean, you're saying this won't hurt them. It'll hold them harmless, but They've put in all this hard work throughout the course of their high school career to get to that level. Why shouldn't we reward them with a letter grade that they continue with?
I also present the social work perspective as someone who graduated with a 4.2. Is that
I'll pull the 2.8 actually.
Is that being the social worker that I am, is that this is actually creates a lot of anxiety, and the kind of the permission to actually not kind of go all out, and the stress that people are trying to get to the 4.2, 5.0, or 4.5 might also be a good thing, because there's high anxiety right now. So the opposite is also true with those high performing students, who, quite frankly, that's where the high suicide rates were before COVID-19, of the pressure to perform at those levels. So I just
that's why it's an option.
I just want to, but again, I just want to throw the opposite is also true. With those kids who are high achieving. So, but I think I also would be remiss to say, it'd be really great to talk to the department chairs and Principal Billingsley to see what their thoughts are, because I think it's also a different type of workload, if you will, given social distance learning from our workforce. And they also, they are, good at what they do, and look forward to hearing from them. But I also do not want to lower our standard to everybody gets credit, no credit, and that's where we are. I would love a hybrid option, if you will.
Well, I appreciate the Board of Trustees' comments. I think they're very important. And if you could give us some grace for a few days to get together with Principal Billingsley, department chairs, and discuss our options. Because ultimately, obviously, the teacher assigns the grades. So I really want to check with them and see what this means for them and what their assessments look like in distance learning.
Good. Sounds fair to me.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Is there anything else on F1? Great. Thank you for that, Dr. Parsons. All right. Let's move down to F2, restructuring of Yellow Education Center. Superintendent Luna.
Thank you, President Jackson. So I'm going to, for the sake of conciseness, so I'm going to just give a brief summary, and we only have, instead of going through the entire presentation as the subcommittee had spent time on last week, what I'd like to do is just preface this particular area agenda item by referring to the policy subcommittee meeting last week, in which President Jackson and Trustee Wong discussed board policy for the look of an opportunity class, and also reviewed the restructuring of Yellow Education Center. That particular presentation that the subcommittee went through and discussed thoroughly has been loaded onto the agenda online. For the sake of clarity, I've condensed it down to 4 slides of what changes would be. So I'm going to ask Ruth to bring up that presentation. It's just 4 slides to walk us through concisely. She just has to become the presenter.
I'm sharing now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So this is really about the restructuring of the Yellow Education Center for next school year. If we can go to the next slide and look at what those changes would look like. So this evening, the board is going to consider approval of a new job description for the Yolo Education Center, which is labeled as a Director of Special Programs. In that job description, the following responsibilities will be under this supervision, such as Yolo High School, a potential opportunity middle grade class, adult education, the transitional adult living program. Horizons program is 9 or 10 of our most severe students with disabilities in the high school that we have transported to Davis High School for many, many years. And because the programs are too large to keep as they are in Woodland, Davis, we are going to bring our kids back home to their own community and provide a Horizons program under the direction of the SELPA here over at the Yolo Education Center. They will also have an opportunity to mainstream into general ed classes at the Yolo Education Center. Additional responsibilities for this administrator would be suspension and expulsions, which would provide another filter to go through ensuring that the Yolo Education Center is not a permanent placement for students. And we've talked a lot in this year's board meetings in regards to the need for articulation of our athletics as an opportunity for all of our students in grades 6 through 12. And you know, I just realized that I'm not supposed to be doing these slides. I think Dr. Parsons is supposed to be doing these slides. So I'm going to allow him to come in and I'm going to bow out.
I think you're doing great, Superintendent Luna. I did just want to comment because the subcommittee has the advantage of hearing some of the context and the history behind some of this. So just really quickly, Yolo High School, to remind the board, is a continuation high school. You need to be, minimum age is 16. Currently, we have 64 students at Yolo High School. The opportunity middle grades class, we evaluated, the board knows that we had 2 evergreen opportunity classes in our district for years. We closed them a couple years ago because there were some significant issues. For example, there was no clear entrance or exit criteria. There were 2 FDEs that served approximately 10 students. Students were not receiving the appropriate mental health and counseling services. And Evergreen was serving as a special education placement, which opportunity programs are not supposed to do. So the subcommittee gave very significant suggestions on administrative regulation, which we are working on. So that will come back to the board once the subcommittee has the opportunity to review that administrative regulation. The adult education, we have about 180 adults right now. Transitional adult living, we have 11 students in that. The Horizons program is an emotionally disturbed program. As Superintendent Luna said, we've been busing our students over to Woodland forever. And so we really want to bring them back to support them in our own community. And then the suspensions and expulsion and athletic program for the new position for Director of Special Education. I'm sorry, for special programs. Are there any questions on this slide that the board would have? Okay, Ruth, could you go to the next slide, please?
Yes.
And so I think one of the
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was
Kobe
on
Kim
mute.
ran in from the
Sorry.
background from somewhere.
One of the things it said athletic support, athletic program support for 6 through 12. So how do you define that for me, please?
What I would do, one thing that you never really want to do is take the, for 912, the program authority away from the principal, because that is such a huge program that supports Principal Billingsley and her parent base. And so what support means is basically to be there to engage with the principal, with the parents, with the boosters, just to provide additional support for 912. The sixth.
Okay. I still don't understand what that means necessarily. I'm curious as to what, is that like an athletic director position, or is it?
No,
If
there's.
I may jump in here, I don't know how to raise my hand on this particular meeting. Sorry. So the support would be support to the school sites and the people who are who have the positions for athletics, such as at the high school, there is a full-time athletic director as a teacher position. So that this particular position would help to bring articulation of our grades 6 through 8 athletics program, which we have one staff member doing one section of their workload to support all 7 K-8 schools, as crazy as that sounds. That's what support means, is to help create a better athletic systemic program for grades 6 through 8 at all of our K-8s, and then use those programs as feeders into River City High School to prepare the students for a much more, well, the difference is competitive. Middle school is we just are participating. So that would be the support part of the systemic changes. And we can't ask a teacher doing one section of her time a day to create a systemic program. It needs to have a person who has experience in creating systemic systems that will be sustainable and the best use of human resources and other resources to support a program in place like that. That's basically how we look at what support means. There's been no guidance given to athletics. It's kind of, the K-8 is you're on your own, which when I dug into this particular program this year, it's shameful. We have not allocated any money to even support the basic equipment of having athletics. We've given no guidance as to have kids develop in the discipline of those particular sports. And we have had no articulation of motivating our kids to stay in 8th grade, knowing that they will be a raider of whether it's on football or basketball or baseball. We have no articulation feeding into it. And so I think it's going to take a real systemic thinker to help support and implement a real vision for keeping our kids participating in athletics.
Right. And I get that. I mean, I've brought it up several times about having a director of athletics that is above a teacher grade and it looks like this would be an opportunity to put it here. I'm guessing that was either not brought up to the union, or if it was met with a resounding no.
Are you talking about the conversation to eliminate a teacher position?
For the director of the athletic director position at the high school, I said move that over to an actual director position, not an athletic director at the high school that's actually a teacher, but a director of athletics. That's kind of what I was kind of mentioning, and I've brought it up a couple of times.
Yeah, yes.
So they would create a system, and then the person that would be the that is in the athletic director position now at the high school that is a teacher would be more like an assistant or support to the programs at the high school. The person that would oversee all of that would be at the director level at the district.
Yes, and Vice President Pizzotti, we did hear that, and I know I do recall all of those comments. That would mean that we would have to add an additional administrator to our district, and I'm very, very sensitive to that. A teacher position is less costly to a director position in administration. In addition, certificated management, there is a ratio in education code that allows the school district to have a certain amount of administrators to the teaching ratio. So essentially, we would be eliminating a teaching position.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have this position of athletics program support right here. You can put this as athletic director, as responsible for the athletic direction of all the programs. Then you keep that teacher position. I'm saying on this slide, you say athletic program support. Instead of making it athletic program support, you make it athletic direction, and the person at the high school is supporting this program.
I see. Okay, thank you so much for clarifying for that.
It's not anymore. It's just you're changing the supervision level. That's all.
Yes, absolutely. In addition to that, the athletics position at River City High School is under the supervision of the principal. This particular director here would, instead of just making it an athletic director position, we really need it to be much more broad and expanded, and that's why it's just not called an athletic director. I don't know if that's helping or not. It's got that the person has to have much more responsibilities than just athletic.
I wanted to add in.
Superintendent Luna, I'm wondering whether or not this discussion is could inform the job description when we get to it. Because this is, I understand, like a presentation of what could be done, but the specifics of how it's implemented might be more implementable in the discussion of what, as we are actually going to consider adoption of the job description for this position.
That's a great suggestion.
And looks like Vice President Pizzotti walked away. But that's what I'm wondering if
I think you can still do it.
yeah, I appreciate the oversight and the but I'm wondering if when we vote on it, maybe we can provide some direction there about what that position should be, how that should be worded.
Thank you for that, Trustee Wong. Yes, because Assistant Superintendent Gonzalez will be presenting 2 different job descriptions under the action item. So I think that would be a great place to have that discussion.
Yeah.
Is Vice President Pizzotti still on?
He is out of the room, so it looks like he walked away for a little bit.
Here he comes.
Now he's back.
I'm sorry, I had to make a dinner plate. But I hear you fine. I can hear you guys. I have my earbuds in, so I can hear you guys talking. Do you have a question for me?
No, Vice President Pizzotti, my suggestion was that because we're adopting the job description for this specific position, that maybe we should have a more robust discussion about how to implement this when we're about to vote on that the job description.
Sure.
So that we have clarity about what this position is about.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's only because President Jackson and I had the benefit of going through all this in detail.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, I did too. I get it. I did. This is just an important thing to me that I've brought up several times for several years now, and I wanted to get it out there. The process and the systemic progress can be made, I think, if there is a supervisory level at the district office versus
understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that we can get
Yeah.
into it when in the action item, which would probably
Sure.
be very fruitful.
All right. Be right back.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Vice President Pizzotti, for bringing that to our attention, and we'll discuss that during the action item. Are there any other questions about this slide, or can we move on to the budget?
I think we can move on.
Okay, and so these are the new changes for the restructuring that we're discussing for 2021. The Director of Special Programs, it will be cost neutral because of the retirement of the Director of Special Education. And so we're basically going director to director. Then we're, because Director Massey Clover is resigning, or I'm sorry, retiring, we'd like to bring on a program specialist in special education that will work directly at the school site to support our kids. It's cost neutral because we've not re-upped the MOU for Cesar Chavez Community Program. The Opportunity Academy class is cost neutral because we will take a voluntary transfer from another site for a teacher. The Horizons program, it is an additional cost to all districts in our SELPA. That would happen regardless because the SELPA was going to open up another high school class because it was too crowded at Davis High School. So that cost was going to increase regardless if we brought our kids home or not. Social worker, we are talking about a 1 FTE for the Yolo Education Center to support both the students in the Opportunity Program as well as Yolo High School. And that is cost neutral because we're using one of our grants to fund that. And then Project Greenlight, that is the program that is currently at Westfield, been very successful. And it's about trauma, social, emotional curriculum, and for the program at the Opportunity Academy. And then it's also cost neutral because we're using our grant funding. It's LCSSP is the acronym for it, but we'll be using that to support our Project Greenlight.
Okay.
And lastly, yes.
No, I just wanted to make sure we're putting to the record that so the social worker position and the that's being grant funded, and the Project Greenlight Go that's also being grant funded, that is particularly with the social worker position. And about that, and I thought from the subcommittee meeting that there was another position that was going to be grant funded as well. But I just want to make sure that we're clear that the people who go into these positions are understand that these positions are grant funded positions, and should those grants disappear, so do those positions.
Absolutely.
Because,
I'm sorry. Absolutely. Assistant Superintendent Gonzalez is aware of that as we move forward with these different positions as well as the curriculum.
Right. And again, my biggest concern with that is that because I know how it goes. People become attached to positions and get attached to roles or services that someone's providing or that a program's providing. But then when that funding goes away, well, we still want to keep that. That's how we become Sac City.
Thank you, President Jackson, for that. And you're absolutely right. I received for 16 years in a row a pink slip because I was grant funded, and it was always, pending funding. So what we have committed to is implementing a new part in our system and onboarding candidates. The candidates that have, you're absolutely correct. There is one position, I'm sorry, that I left off of this slide, and it's outreach specialist. And the outreach specialist interviews, all of the candidates were informed in regards to it being grant funded, and that while the district has every intent to reapply, it is not guaranteed. And in the contract, when we onboard these grant funded positions, it will say that in their contract as they sign it. which is new for Washington Unified. We'll be implementing that new this year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Luna. Ruth, can you go to the last slide, please?
Yes.
And so with the different restructuring, you all know that Dr. Phillips is currently overseeing the Yellow Education Center, and that will be going to the Director of Special Programs. So the second job description you'll be looking at under action is a revised job description for Dr. Phillips. And what he would be doing is two different things. For student services, he would be overseeing our multi-tiered systems of support programs, which is PBIS, Transformative Justice and Education. He'll be still looking and supporting our attendance with our outreach specialists. He'll be working with social services for the county as well as our social workers, and he'll be in charge of our school safety plans. On top of that, he will be looking and supporting our special education programs. Dr. Phillips was a very successful special education teacher, as well as has his master's in special education. And so he will be looking at the compliance issues with our SELPA and CDE, as well as supporting our special education program at the school sites, our non-public schools, our trainings, etc., as well as working with the parent advisory with the SELPA. Is there anything you'd like to add, Superintendent Luna?
Not at this time. Trustees, if you have any questions in regards to the revision to Dr. Phillips' job description for next year, that will be going to the board for in a later part of the meeting, but we wanted to just clarify that from the subcommittee meeting last week.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, well, thank you very much. I think it's very exciting the direction the district is going.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Dr. Parsons. Hold on, I gotta pull my agenda back up.
The consent agenda is up next, President Jackson.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you. All right, so we have the consent agenda.
President
So
Jackson, this is Trustee Alcala. I would like to pull G10 and G11.
G10
I'd
and
like to
G11.
table them. Right. I had concerns simply because of the economic climate right now. People have voiced concerns. This is not a good time for a bond. And I would like to table these.
Okay.
I don't have a problem pulling them to discuss, but I have a problem tabling.
Yeah, we can pull to discuss.
I'm,
And then if we decide to table at that time, that would be
All right, that's fine.
appropriate. Yeah. Okay, so we'll pull G10 and G11 and move those to discussion. Are there any other changes to the consent
you might
agenda?
want to turn off your video while you're chewing.
So I'll take any other changes to the consent agenda? Okay, with that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move with
Okay.
G10 and
With the
G11
changes?
removed. Yep.
Okay, and seconded by Vice President Pizzotti. Okay, so let's have go ahead and go through our roll call vote. Vice President Pizzotti?
Aye.
Trustee Wong?
Aye.
Trustee Alcala?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Okay, so consent agenda is approved with G10 and G11 moved over to pulled for discussion. All right. So H, action items. H1, approval of the Certificate Director 2 Special Programs Job Description. Assistant Superintendent Gonzalez.
Yes, good evening, President Jackson, Board Trustee, Superintendent Luna, and all others in attendance. As was presented by Superintendent Luna and Dr. Parsons with regard to the reorganization or restructuring of YOLO Education Center, this evening I'm presenting the new job description for certificated of special programs. And the duties, as we discussed at length in a policy committee meeting last week, but for the purposes and simplicity this evening, in essence, this position will oversee and administrate the district's alternative education programs, as well as supervise and evaluate teachers and support staff, assist and plan and implement school district policies, regulations, and operational procedures, and oversight of the programs that were mentioned, the continuation high school, grades 10 through 12, Opportunity Academy, grades 7 through 9, transitional adult learning, the TAL program, adult education, and also social emotional curriculum and programs. And along with that, this position will also, as discussed, oversee the the athletics program, and actually facilitate and support, I should say, because the high school will continue to maintain an athletic director under the direct supervision of the high school principal, but this one would actually oversee the athletics programs for grades 6 through 12. So they'll be working in collaboration, and then of course this person will be supporting the K-8s, probably more hands-on as well. So I believe that captures the main components of this job description. And if you have any questions, I can receive them now.
Okay, I can only see Ruth. So I don't know, Kobe, do you have any questions for that one?
Well, just what I brought up, and that was, I feel like the assistant director at the high school title per se, or just the name assistant, or the director of athletics at the high school name should be up here, and instead of provides support to athletics program, should be moved to the high school person. I don't know how to say this in a more articulate way. I feel like the athletic director responsibility should be following under this person's, or this duty statement here presented before us, because they're a person who is in position to create systemic feeder programs to the high school. So I think the argument's been had that you don't want to take power away from the principal at the high school, and I get that, but I think you need to have kind of an umbrella organization, or someone organizing everything, so that everything feeds properly, and the processes and the protocols all seem to originate from the systemic changes that we would be making. And there should be one person at the head, and then everybody else have assistance to help that along the way. So I guess that's kind of where I'm focusing on, just the athletics aspect of this.
So I could put a little clarity if you'd like. So the athletic director, as Superintendent Luna mentioned, it is a certificated position that falls within the association of WSTA. It is assigned, yes, it does report to the the principal at the high school. This particular job description, of course, it facilitates and supports the WST athletics programs. There's a bullet in this job description that was as a result of last week's policy committee that we incorporated, which entails supervise and evaluate teachers and support staff. So with the athletic director position that's currently open, and we're in recruitment mode, perhaps we can look at having them participate together in that selection process, which is not unusual.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think this person's, in terms of athletics, this person should be supervising the athletic director or at the high school. So I get Brittany should also be supervising that person as well. I personally, I would have this inverted. I would have it inverted. That's my comments. I believe that the athletic director, and I know what the contract says, that the athletic director person is a teaching credentialed person. I get that, but there is a way to negotiate that and say this will be an assistant athletic director position at the high school, and athletic director will be at the district level. So you know, I know they don't necessarily want to give up a position like that, but all you can do, you can just change the name a little bit, keep everything the same with the exception of the responsibility of setting systemic programs. Because right now, how are you going to feed the high school with, say, a basketball team? And is the athletic director at the high school going to set up athletic programs at the K-8 schools?
They should.
I would hope so. They should. But
yeah, they should.
And if he's not, then, because I know that hasn't been happening. So if he's not doing that, I think the athletic director may see their position as only in the purview of the high school if they're stationed at the high school. So that's kind of my problem with the whole idea is you take the position out of the high school and you set it somewhere loftier, and then you have somebody who has the ability to impact all the schools.
Okay, Trustee Wong.
I am wondering, instead of the bullet point that says facilitate and support, that to meet the intended desire of Vice President Zadi is more of direct WSD athletic programs in grades 6 through 12 versus a support. Does that sound right? Like if I'm looking at the job description right now, versus facilitate and support, that the simply change the word to say direct.
Yes.
Or something else. I mean, open for discussion, but I think that's a way to. But President Jackson, it looks like, and again, this is not my lane. Social services, all of that. You can talk to me, and I'll talk to you about where I feel about the end of this. But yes, just a suggestion.
Well, here's my concern with that is that if you look at the job description for this position, it's pretty hefty. So whoever is going to walk into this position, they're being asked pretty much to put on a pretty Herculean effort in order to be able to carry out the functions and the duties and the responsibilities of their job. I understand. I think I understand where Vice President Pizzati is coming from, because in larger districts, for example, I know Sac City has one, El Grove has one. They actually have an athletic director for the entire district. But then each high school also has their athletic directors who still report directly to their principals. And then the middle schools and so on, they also have their athletic directors. But the district athletic director is more or less responsible for coordinating the programs for all the levels, but then it's the responsibility of the specific athletic directors at the sites to implement those programs.
Right.
So for me, I think it's just maybe just a little bit of a tweakage of the verbiage in the description for that particular piece of the position, where that, I think the heavy lifting as far as that program piece, to me, considering that our athletic director position is essentially, unless we've changed it, it's a full pull-out position.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of time for that athletic director at the high school to be able to facilitate programs at all of our K-8 schools, in addition to the responsibilities that they need to incur at the high school. I mean, it's just, you know what I mean.
That might be a Assistant Superintendent Gonzalez question, but I would say I would be worried that the person at the high school would get complacent in the fact that their focus will be at the high school because they're there.
Right. I see that. But I think if the direction is clearly given to the principal that, hey, you know what, the athletic director is not only the athletic director for the high school, but it's also the athletic director for the feeder programs to help facilitate that pipeline of students.
Right.
I think if that's understood and the principal gives that direction, and then this position is more or less the overseer of making sure so that we don't have things that fall through the crack of where we have equipment that hasn't been replaced in 10 years type of a deal.
Right. But then structurally, it would mean that Principal Billingsley would be overseeing somebody who is overseeing other principals' work sites. So,
You know,
structurally, I think that would be problematic. But I'm fine with that.
So President Jackson made the comment about oversee. So it could, in essence, read facilitate, oversee, and support the WSD athletic program, because that way this individual would have oversight.
Yeah.
And granted, at the high school and the several athletic programs that are existing at the high school, then this director position is not micromanaging or in the weeds, because the high school in of itself, as President Jackson mentioned, it is a full pull-out position. And then that way they can work together to make sure that there is
Correct.
that transition from the K-8 schools or the 8th graders transitioning into the high school level. So I think overseas seems like a good.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a logistical question, Norma? And maybe I missed this. We have a middle, I won't name the teacher, but we have a middle school AD too, right?
It's a partial. I think it's a section, so it's not a full-time. It's not full-time, but we do have someone that is supporting it, but it's limited.
Right, but we're keeping that position as well?
I believe so, yes.
Right, I just wanted to be clear on that. So that would be this person oversees the work of both the high school aid. I can see the organizational confusion that could happen with what Vice President Pizzotti was outlining, given that we also have them, so would this person, and I think that this is how Superintendent Luna presented it, was that they were in charge of the big picture vision, and that both the part-time 6 through 8 AD person and the high school AD person would fulfill that vision. Is that the right understanding? I would just want to make sure that that's the intent.
That is, I believe, the intent. That's how I understand it as well. Superintendent Luna?
Yeah, that is the ultimate intent. It's going to take time to get there. We definitely need somebody, and I completely see what Vice President Pizzotti is saying, is we really need somebody to be in charge and pitch the vision and get everybody on board. And everybody on board, meaning the full-time athletic director at River City High School and the middle grades athletic support. She has 1 period a day, I believe, that helps to organize and support. So I think the recommendations of changes will help bring a little bit of clarity to that in terms of overseeing is a stronger definition than just facilitate.
Yeah, and even maybe even that they need to work collaboratively with the high school and middle school athletic directors as well.
Yeah, that's exactly the intent of this responsibility. Absolutely.
Are you saying, President Jack, to add that in the job description?
Yeah, I would. You know, that they're also are responsible for working collaboratively. Man, that's a tough one to say. With the high school and K-8 athletic directors to implement whatever. I don't know. I'm not the best wordsmith sometimes, but
I'm trusting, Norma, did you understand, like, just to add that extra? So what I'm hearing is in terms of changes, is they
Yes,
oversee.
I'm capturing notes. I was going to actually make a note in the text box as well.
Gotcha. Thank you. So oversee, facilitate, and support, and then in collaboration with, like, would that be like in collaboration with school site principals, or something like that?
Yeah, principals and the athletic director, athletic supports of 6 through 12. Yes.
Gotcha. I think that would make this a little bit more aligned with the intent of Vice President Pizzotti and President Jackson.
I will make that revision.
And then you were going to talk about the other revision in terms of qualifications of also under qualification that we talked about online. Okay.
Yes,
I don't know if you wanted to share that.
My apologies. Sorry about that. Yes, so we, instead of having the fourth bullet under qualifications read successful administrative experience school site principal required, we switched it out to read preferred. And that's the change. And we didn't do a blue line or track changes because this is an actual new job description. Whereas the next one, you'll notice that there are blue lines, meaning it's an existing job description and revisions are made to an existing one. So that's why this one does not have any track changes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Do we have anything else for H1? Okay. This is an action item. So we need a roll call vote for the approval of.
Wait, do we have a motion to approve?
I'm just reading what we're approving. For so we need a motion for the approval of the certificated 2 Director 2 Special Programs job description.
I'll move.
Moved by Vice President Pizzotti.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Alcala. Okay. And so again, roll call vote. So Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
Trustee Wong.
Aye.
Vice President Pizzotti.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So the Director 2 Special Programs job description is approved with the noted amendments and changes. Okay, so H2, approval of the revisions to the current Certificated Director 2 Student and Family Services job description.
Great, thank you. So as we've discussed, or as you've discussed in the reorganization or restructuring of the Olo Education Center, and as Dr. Parsons mentioned with regard to the shift of assignments or duties for the Student and Family Support Services, currently that's Dr. Phillips, the job description needed to be revised because we have shifted some of those duties into the newly adopted job description. So this description, as I mentioned a moment ago, actually has blue tracking or blue track changes because now these have shifted. So with those shifting, we have added in the third bullet under, or rather the second bullet under basic function, to oversee and supervise, instead of it being alternative, because that has shifted over to the other position, special education programs. And he will continue to be overseeing or responsible for the Department of Student Support Services. And under the essential duties and responsibilities, you could see the track changes or the strikeouts with regard to no longer overseeing the school resource officers, and also discipline of level of severe suspensions and expulsion proceedings, did make the revision to add special education and to incorporate the MTSS, or the multi-tiered system of supports, and the equity and transformative justice programs. Kept that broad and not tied to a specific program, because job descriptions are more permanent, whereas programs can change over the time or over years. And other than that, I believe that that is the key changes. There are no other changes to the job description for the Director of Student and Family Support Services. So with that, we request your approval.
President Jackson, I'm raising my hand if you see my little hand. You're on mute, though. I'm waiting for permission. I have a thumbs up from President Jackson. I would just request the same change in terms of required to preferred under the admin, the school site principal.
Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry, I didn't capture it for this job description. I will certainly make that change.
That's it for me.
Okay. Are there any other changes? Any other discussion? Okay. Then we need to have a motion for the approval of the revisions to the current certificated Director of Student and Family Services job description.
I move.
Moved by Trustee
Second.
Wong, seconded by Vice President Pizzotti. Roll call vote. Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
Trustee Wong.
Aye.
Vice President Pizzotti.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So the H2 is approved. H3,
Thank you.
adoption of Resolution 1920-14, reduction of classified services.
Yes, this item, my apologies. Yeah, this resolution comes as a presentation to you and requesting your approval in the reduction of 5 full-time equivalent campus aides and 1 student record secretary position, with the total of 0.0 FTE. What does the increase in the where district is trying to promote and increase safety measures and practices at River City and at Yolo High School. I believe it was last month or not that long ago, the job description was presented and approved by the board for the campus security monitor. And we've been in active recruitment for that position, and that recruitment has resulted in 5 new positions that were approved this evening. And because of that transition and elevating the responsibilities and duties to heighten the safety measures at the school, therefore the elimination of these positions are necessary. And the student record secretary position has been vacant. Is vacant rather. And this position is being eliminated due to lack of work. And the total cost implication or reduction is $84,000 for the student record secretary position. And the increase of the shift or the reclassification of that position to a higher level is an increase of $30,000 per year, or salary differential. And if I'm welcoming your questions.
President Jackson, I have a question. This is Trustee Alcala.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. The position for the record secretary, what has that been rolled into? The responsibilities that were previously there, have they gone into another position?
They have been, we have a student safety, actually Dr. Phillips' area. His staff has been absorbing those duties.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Or where are we on H3? Yeah, H3. No.
So I just for clarity, this is actually a cost savings measure, yes, or
Of about 54,000, yeah.
Correct.
I just wanted to be read that into the record that this with a person retiring and then also transferring duties for, or elevating the duties of current CSEA staff.
Yeah, and if I could mention as well, as because whenever you have a reduction, and knowing that we were going down this path, there are 2 vacant campus aide positions that we've been on hold for because we anticipated that there would be some bumping. So the individuals, 3 of them are going to be total that we have several, right? We have 1 at each site, and then the 4 at the high school and 1 at YOLO. So I've been monitoring very carefully to make sure that we will not be displacing anyone. Someone will have a landing spot, so to speak, in essence. The high school, the 4 that are at the high school and the 1 at the YOLO continuation program do have bumping rights into the K-8 positions. And like I said, we had a couple vacancies, so we've been holding. We did not actively recruit those in anticipation of having a landing spot for these individuals. And then on the classified HR recommendation report, 3 of those are moving into the higher level position. So it does make for some security for our classified members.
I appreciate you working with CSA on that. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Fantastic. So do we have a motion to adopt the resolution 1920-14 reduction of classified services? Okay. So moved by Trustee Alcala, seconded by Vice President Pizzotti.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. So roll call vote. Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
Trustee Wong.
Aye.
Vice President Pizzotti.
Aye.
I also vote aye. So H3 is approved. H4, Action One-to-One Learning Initiative. Marco, you would be up. And Stan.
We'll let Stan take the lead on this one because the curriculum is going to lead this conversation.
All right.
Thank you. All right, can you guys hear me better now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
At least I can. I'm not sure about Trustee Wong.
Okay.
I can hear you perfectly, Director Moisich.
Okay, thank you. That's wonderful. I had to switch to my phone because there seemed to be some trouble with my computer there. Thank you for having us tonight here. Marco Baiza, our Instructional Technology Director, and myself, we're going to be making this presentation. I'm sure that over years you've heard from teachers and different staff members about the need to make sure all our students have access to hardware and in the classroom. And so in the spirit of that, we think we have a very good option for you going forward. So for us, it begins with equity. And of course, as you know, a large portion of our students are in the socioeconomically disadvantaged category. And that includes ELs, homeless, foster youth. And when it comes to acquiring technology and digital access, some of them are behind other students in the district. So for us, this is a big equity issue, and we think this initiative can help us improve that. Nowhere has that become more so in the forefront than what is currently happening with this COVID school closures. And that has definitely accelerated our needs. It's also accelerated our timeline for improving this. So those are the big factors in why we think this is a very important initiative. The other part of equity, of course, goes to access to the hardware. So if we go to slide 3, we're going to start talking a little bit about access, and my partner, Marco Baiza, is going to talk to you about that slide.
Thank you, Mr. Stan, and good evening again. I want to talk about the 3,200 devices that have expired. Google, like any other operating system and any other company, puts an expiration date on their hardware and also puts an expiration date on their software. And that's critical for us for one reason. we need to abide by state testing. And the devices that we currently have at the moment have come up for expiration. Expiration means they're no longer going to be supported by Google, and that's the critical team, as of 6/19/2019, 6/30/2019. So because the state is a few versions of operating system behind Google, we were able to use those devices had there been a test issued. But we will not be able to use 3,200 devices next year for any state testing. So this is a must that we need to replace these particular devices.
Okay, I think we're going to move on to slide number 4. And these are some of the things that we just wanted to highlight for you of why we benefit with this initiative. We know that better technology access will increase our engagement. We know that students are better motivated when they're using technology in their classroom environment. We also think the home connectivity part of this is very important part in this initiative, as we think it's going to develop better social and communication skills from home to school. I also put the digital necessity. That there was a point where using technology was more convenient, and it was about convenience, it was about access to information. However, in this day of age, it's really become a necessity. We wouldn't even be able to operate our schools right now had it not been for the amount of digital effectiveness that we have and capacity. So it has now become a necessity. Even before the school closures, it was a necessity. And we also believe that this will help us produce students, using this technology will help us produce students who are college and career ready. We can go to slide number 5, please. Previously, when we talked about adding technology into our system, there's always been a lot of discussion about whether or not the technology was going to be used. Was it going to be effective in the classroom? Is it going to make a difference in the classroom? We're in a lot better place right now than we were several years ago, and our pedagogy is strengthening in the classroom. We are developing more deeper learning. We are developing more inquiry-oriented activities, more problem-solving, project-based activities. So we're at a point where our pedagogy is going that direction, where the technology, we need the technology to make sure that's effective. A big part of any initiative that involves the classroom also involves planning time for teachers and training for teachers. So we're in a really good place right now. First of all, I've been amazed to see how fast our teachers have been learning new things on the fly with our school closures. But we have a couple of mechanisms already in place that I think will help us as we adapt to a one-to-one initiative. First of all, we have a professional learning time that's designated every week, which will allow our teachers to plan together and work together. That currently is in existence, and we are getting better with that all the time. Last year was our first year of the professional learning time. In addition, just this year, we have what we call ITLs at every school site. These are instructional technology lead, and these are teachers, multiple teachers at every school site in our district. They're able to mentor other staff members and give on-the-go support, and also provide a lot of training. And they have been doing a great job recently of providing resources for their teachers at their schools. So these are two great infrastructure pieces that we already have going for us, where I know that our teachers can get the support they need. In addition, I really need to point out that at the moment, the curriculum that we are getting, our adoptions, it is totally tuned in and needing technology to implement to complete fidelity. So That may not have been the case many years ago with textbooks, but the new adoptions are heavily reliant on technology. I can just tell you from my personal viewpoint as a high school principal that it has hindered us not having technology hardware access across the board, and this initiative would take care of that for us. So that's a very important piece. I'd like to also go to slide 6, please. This is just to give you an idea of the different activities that will take place across this. This is obviously not just one thing that happens this spring. There'll be a number of activities that happen throughout the years in this cycle. This kind of gives you the first year cycle of what it would look like, the different types of activities. And I'm going to ask my partner, Marco, to explain a little bit more about some of these different points in this slide.
Thanks, Mr. Stan. So starting with the spring, we did an analysis and quantifying the number of machines for replacement. And that was done, I would say, May 2019. We hired an inventory company to go out to every site and inventory all these devices, every device from document cameras to Chromebooks. And then I got the opportunity to present the inventory by device, by school, and I presented it to the principal starting in October. And then I repeated that cycle with the instructional technology leaders, October, November, December, January, February, and including March. And I also informed services, business services, and cabinet. And the scenario at that time was just to replace devices one for one, but not have a plan like partner Stan is presenting with me today. So our target is having new devices for every student in grades 4 through 10. And every year, we provide a new set of device to each 4th grader. And then that will continue for 5 years. The students that receive the new devices would keep them as they matriculate from grade to grade. And at the end of the 5 year, we would revisit this lease again, and hopefully there'll be a higher count of students 5 years from today in our district, so we can continue to grow. But that is our thinking. For the summer, I got lucky in hiring an instructional technology coordinator this past summer. And with that, we were able to get lucky, again, working with Dr. Parsons and Norma on establishing the instructional technology leaders, which we then presented to the board. I think it was late August or early September, because we were running behind. But the quality of our teachers has been, of these people, has been extraordinary. They're able to take these white picket fences, knock them down, build bridges, because they're curriculum integrators. They're not technology people. If they have questions about technology, I have a pretty strong and talented team that can help them in parallel. But we're able to provide an impact and influence to the classroom very quickly. As Stan has mentioned, we were able to pivot in hours from normal business to distance learning with that group. So they will lead the training. And then Stan will work with the school site principals, and we'll work behind them to have parent and student orientation meetings that are kind of similar to the parent universities that some of our schools have had. And my Amanda Divalbis, the instructional technology leader, has participated with a few principals with that. And then the ongoing professional learning support is not only technical support, it's not only collegial support, but sometimes it's emotional support. You have to talk to people who understand your trade, and the ITLs and the coordinator of instruction of technology is able to do that. The other items we'll continue to evaluate as we move forward. And then when we get to the spring of 2021, we come back again with an additional purchase. And again, those will be the incoming new 4th graders that come into the 2021-22 school year. And you can end with the last one. Please, Stan.
Well, we're going to continue to monitor this. Obviously, we're going to want to keep improving as we go. In terms of implementation or in integration, I also wanted to, you heard Marco mention, we have an instructional technology coordinator, and that's an important piece in training, and that's been working really great for us this year in the district. I want to show you a little bit about what the distribution would look like from year to year. As you heard Marco said, we would be giving Chromebooks to fourth graders each year. But in the first year, we'd be giving them out to more than just fourth graders. So let me show you what that chart looks like in slide 7. So this is basically a table that shows you what our device life in this one-on-one initiative, how it would go through the year 24-25. And it basically shows you that it's a 5-year rotation. And so a student in 2021, a fourth grader, would get their new Chromebook, and then that would stay with them all the way till 8th grade. And so the first year, if you notice on the table, many students other than fourth graders will also be receiving a new Chromebook. But in the years 21-22 through the end of this 5-year cycle, only fourth graders would be receiving new devices. So I'll let you look at that table so you can kind of follow along and see if are there any questions on this table?
No question, but I do have, so that's why in 2021, you were procuring 4,681 machines?
Well, there's a few reasons. There's a few reasons for that. But one of the reasons, and I don't think, and Marco can allude more to it, is that there are only this first year might be 3,200. We need 3,200 that are going to expire this year, but actually there's a whole bulk of those that are going to expire the year after as well. So that's also part of this equation. A big part of the equation also is just to make sure we can get a Chromebook in the hands of everybody in these grade levels. I mean, that's the ultimate thought that's going to help us with our classroom technology and instruction.
Can I ask a question? What happens to the expired? So what do we do with expired tech? Do we return them for a discount? What do we do with that?
That's a great question. We have 2,800 of them at the moment that's been issued to all students, and they've been working so far. And when they start returning or the year ends, we'll look at what condition they happen to be in, and we can do multiple things. One scenario, we can prepare them and use them at lower grades. A second scenario, we can use them for parts. Those are the two most common scenarios that we'll be able to use.
Vice President Pizzati.
Yeah, so you mean to tell me that Google has put a life expectancy on these? So the computers that we're using right now aren't going to be good 3 or 4 months from now?
Yeah, Google does put a timeline, and so do other manufacturers such as Dell, HP, Lenovo. And
man, that's a racket right there. They're doing some racketeering.
Well,
Apple does too. They all do.
Apple too, then I guess. That is some.
And
I'm using the 7-year-old MacBook right now, so that we got from an Apple grant,
exactly.
from 9 years ago.
Exactly.
And Apple makes dynamite products, and they do last a lot longer than some other competitors. They take the model from those gentlemen on call, Big Shavers. You buy a device, but what costs you an arm and a leg is the cartridge.
Mm-hmm.
And then they took that model to inkjet printers, and now they're taking that same model to this, and they're also extending the model with subscriptions. So that's the channels we work with right now.
So what you're saying then is that's going to cost us $1.86 million for the first year. for that 4,600 and change computers. Is that correct?
Are you, excuse me, Vice President Pizzotti, are you wanting to go to slide 8 at this time?
Yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah.
it.
Well, that's where I was. I'm sorry, I didn't know it was slide 8,
Yes.
but I was
Don't feel
doing the
bad. I'm on
math on
slide
the
9.
agenda. I was doing the math on the agenda.
You're ahead. That's
Yeah.
all. You're just ahead of us.
Yeah. That's okay, because I'm on slide 9, so I'm looking at that too.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Slide 8 and slide 9 are very related to one another. So slide 8 is basically a breakdown of how many machines we would purchase each year during this cycle. It also extends beyond the 5 years, so you can kind of see that this is renewing itself. And it shows you the amount of dollars that it will cost us as a district for each of these years. In addition, below the chart, you see the assumptions that we built this cost on.
Oh.
Okay.
So, hold
Go
on.
ahead.
So the Chromebooks then that are we purchasing these, or would we be leasing these? Because I see, it seems to me like the price is listed is that a purchase price, or is that the price for us to lease them?
This is a lease.
Then does that mean at the end of the life expectancy of these units, then do they then just get sent back to Google? Since we're
You can do a
leasing them, we're
couple.
not purchasing them.
Yeah, you can do a couple of things. You can trade it in for a down payment to the subsequent lease, which, and depending on the value of those devices, missing keys, broken glass, they're not going to have much value. So we want to make these machines last for 5 years, and our district has had that experience that they do. Also, Google and other manufacturers, now that this is more mature industry, are seeing that these machines do last 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, we go into another lease.
But Marco, that's just with the use that they're not taking these things home though. But this is a proposal so that students can take these Chromebooks home. Am I understanding that correctly, or are they just parking them at the school? Let me help me understand.
Yeah, my preference is for them to take them home. And let me just give you a little bit of insight. We distributed 4,615 Chromebooks. They're at the homes right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're working. So we would expect the same with this model.
They weren't working Monday.
They weren't working the last couple of days.
I think that's my point. My point is, like, when they come back to us, they may not be in the mint condition that our teachers help keep them in. So I think that's a huge assumption that they'll come back with high value. So appreciate the thinking that our students will care for our items, and I hope and believe that to be true. But I don't know if we'd get the full value for them. So I just want to put that out there. So thank you for sharing your assumption. I hadn't realized that it's a $398 lease per year, or for 5 years?
Unit.
Per unit, but that the lease is annually, or the release is essentially $400, and that is for 5 years. Help me understand that. And I'm not trying to do the math, even though I have a 4.325 GPA.
Yes, if you take the $398.01 divided by 5, that's $79 a year.
Gotcha. So that's what I think. Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to understand, because I was like, I could buy a Chromebook right now for a couple $100, right? Like a good one.
We did.
Okay, so it's $79 per student. Okay, and that's about the cost of. I mean, that's less than cost of kind of curriculum that we buy every single year. And maybe that's a Stan question or Dr. Parsons question.
What did you say about the curriculum? I'm sorry, I did not understand that.
So I'm just saying that this is $79 per student per year. And so I feel like, having been on the curriculum committee, that we actually spend a lot more per student on curriculum.
We do. That's absolutely true. Even though curriculum is online and we're not necessarily having to put it into giant textbooks like maybe in the past, publishers have found a way to still make a profit. So yes, it's more expensive.
But you're saying we would have to pay the curriculum license on top of the Also, in addition to the computer.
Curriculum does not come with the Chromebook. I mean, Chromebook has features into it, but the curriculum is a separate adoption process and a separate price tag.
Okay, gotcha. Because I had thought that this was coming out of our curriculum budget, so I'm just trying to understand.
So it is coming out. Part of it is coming out of our curriculum budget. So let me try to help you understand that piece. Right now, at some locations, I'm going to speak to River City high schools because that's most fresh in my mind. Most of the teachers have to end up sharing their Chromebooks because the Chromebooks are stationed with a teacher.
Gotcha.
And so they're having to share their Chromebooks. However, if we dispersed and distributed the Chromebooks by student, you would have enough Chromebooks for every student.
Gotcha.
And so that means that with all that sharing going on, even though our teachers are being very nice to each other, the point is that you can't always get things into the classroom in real time when you need them to really enhance the curriculum the way with the fidelity that it needs to. And speaking of the current curriculum, things like StudySync really, you can't do StudySync. That's the 912 English adoption. You really can't do that curriculum very well unless you have consistent access to hardware.
So just if I understand correctly, even the curriculum that we adopted, we're actually not fully capitalizing on the money we're already spending on curriculum.
That's correct. And so this will help us. This will help us quite a bit. It would be much more expensive to end up buying, for example, I'm just going to use the high school as an example. If you have roughly, I can't remember the exact number of rooms at the high school, but you have about almost 2,200 students. Basically, 60 classrooms with Chromebooks, Chrome carts would be enough. And you would have enough units for every student. However, there are almost 90 somewhat classrooms, which means that, if you had to pay Chromebook carts for 90 classrooms, that would add another third to the price. So this actually does end up, this just happens to be a very efficient way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking for the cost benefit analysis of the curriculum because it's not separate and apart from me. Right, because the curriculum, we spent a whole lot, and I just wanted to be clear that we're just acknowledging we're not actually fully capitalizing on the curriculum we've already bought. So this would actually create more efficiencies in some ways. Is that what I'm understanding?
It would create more efficiencies, but I think rather than just efficiency, it would make instruction a lot more effective. I think that's probably.
Sorry, wrong word. Yes, wrong word. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Vice President Pizzotti?
Yeah. So. I'm struggling with the 398.01 cost per machine and the number needed to be procured in 2021 at 4,681. You're saying the yearly payment is 494,919. I'm not seeing how that gets to that.
The math is slightly off. Yes.
Maybe it's the discount.
No, the math is correct. So one of the assumptions there is that there's an insurance cost included with each machine. So because this is a lease, gosh, I've been really quiet tonight. It's been nice to listen.
Don't worry, my question for you is coming up, Chris.
Oh, good. That's exciting. The costs here are a lease for machine. To purchase the machine over a 3 or 4 year period goes into the millions of dollars annually.
Right.
And so this is a budget neutral action. It is coming out of restricted materials, which is part of the textbooks and materials annual adoption, because we really do need to replace them so that the students can do testing because of the obsolescence that is built in. And the purchasing is basically price prohibitive. And because they can't be updated after the 6th year, they essentially become paperweights, and the state doesn't allow us to use them for testing anymore. So this is the most cost-effective for cash flow that we could find for an ongoing program. We priced out multiple options. The difference in price you're seeing between this slide and the next slide is the cost of insurance. So we had to add in a price per machine on top of the lease agreement for loss, damage, theft, and maintenance, because the machines are also built that, let's say you do get a cracked screen. we aren't going to pay to replace that because they're actually more expensive to repair. So we actually have insurance on top of the base cost to replace the machine if that damage occurs.
Wait, so I guess I'm misunderstanding. Why does it, so based on numbers, 40, just for round numbers, 4,700 costs $500,000, but $626 procured new machines cost $550,000.
Because it's a scalable 5-year lease. So those 4,681 machines are being paid over a multiple year period, 5 years, and then the 626 adds on top of them, and then 643 on top of them. So you've got a 5-year scaling. So imagine if you were leasing 5 cars 1 year apart.
Yep.
And so the reason that the cost plateaus in year 5 is you are now up to the full fleet of machines and the cost stabilizes.
Gotcha.
So what you're saying is we're undertaking a 5-year, roughly $4.5 million endeavor at a time when we're going to be making cuts.
Are we making cuts?
We're going to have to during a recession.
So yeah, and I so appreciate that, because you can imagine the drum that I am pounding. But you're correct. But there's also, you got to remember that there's also a necessity here. So
I get that, but is there a way to do this through a bond program?
There used to be. So bond parameters have now changed so that you can buy technology infrastructure, but you can't actually buy devices any longer. Devices.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we have you go to slide 9, because I think that might paint the picture. I know you're looking at it, but I think that paints the picture a little bit more. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not interrupting. It's fine. And so we can't buy individual devices any longer. We can buy infrastructures like what we're doing now with bandwidth, with making sure that people have access. But to buy
bandwidth is the problem.
To buy individual items of like a Chromebook, we can't, because it's now considered a disposable item. So bonds are useful for long-term implementation, but a Chromebook expires in 5 to 6 years and it's no longer considered usable by the state. So no, we can't use bond funding on it any longer.
So then what you're telling me is all the Chromebooks, that are in the 4th through 12th grades right now are not usable?
No, it's about matching the number that are going obsolete with a strategic.
Right, I get that. I get the ones that are going obsolete, but I know that there's a lot of the schools have done their own fundraising to buy Chrome cards for certain classes and for certain grade levels. What about those they're not obsolete? I mean, are those being factored into everything? I mean, I'm struggling with the idea of spending roughly $4 million over 5 years when there's certain computers that are working just fine right now that we're putting in the hands of kids right now that aren't going to be good in just another 4 or 5 months from now. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, so that's correct. And Marco can address the technical details, but basically they stopped letting us update the operating systems, and they're no longer good for testing, and that means also the curriculum becomes inoperable after about a year on them. So this does include all Chromebooks, including those by title.
So the licensing thing.
Yes,
the computers may work, but the licensing won't.
When you can't update the operating system, so all the new updates that come out won't operate the older the operating system becomes.
Man, I'm serious. That is an absolute racket. That is an absolute racket.
We should be in IT. I agree. Yeah.
Seriously.
I mean, we're all in the wrong business. I feel like that's what we're thinking right now. With that said, I understand that there's also an equity lens to this, where there are students who may not have access to their individual computers at home. I think that there's an interesting opportunity there to create real equity as we intended with the board. Assuming that we can figure out the broadband connectivity issue as well.
No, I think that's the problem. I think we should be focusing on that.
But I mean, and I know that Superintendent Luna has been trying to figure that out as well, so I appreciate that. That was going to be in my public comment. But I think the hardware issue is a real one for families who may not be able to to do what we just said earlier, that the trustees were able to just buy computers for their students. So I appreciate even the thoughtfulness of being able to create equity for families who may not have access to computers to type reports at home and do all of that. So I want to acknowledge that as well.
Now, are we so the expectation is then that kids are going to be taking these computers home? Then or is the expectation that they will be bringing them back daily, or will there still be classrooms or computers in the classrooms for students to use? Because if we're expecting them to bring them back and forth like textbooks, I could see some of these things. I mean,
disappearing.
They're not gonna last 5 years.
No, because I have two. So I have. Don't tell my principal, but I have 2 work computers that I have because I have
President
a computer.
Jackson, you're being recorded.
I don't care.
Mister, don't tell my principal.
Yeah, no. But I have 2 work computers. One's a MacBook Pro, and the other one is a brand new HP that I got this year that I can't stand. But in just the 7 months that I've had this computer, I mean, and just transporting it back and forth when work in my bag, in the computer protection pack into my bag, you know, the corner's bent, and there's all kinds of stuff that's happened to this thing. And I think I've used it more in the last week than I have in the last 7 months. And so I would imagine that if we're expecting kids to kind of bring them back and forth like textbooks, these things definitely aren't going to last 5 years, 4 years.
So those are very valid points, President Jackson. Those are very valid points. You know, I want to point out this is, you know, one-on-one initiatives this is not brand new. They've been around for a while, and so there are things that people can do to do a better job to maintain them. Part of the timeline that on slide 6 really talked about working with parents, and this is a very important piece to the community to really teach them on maintenance, on how to take care of things, and not just parents, of course, but kids as well. So there's going to be quite a bit of effort made to maintain the equipment. I agree that this could be difficult, but not every day will they take them home. But to optimize the equity issues and to optimize the ability of our parents and students to work and involve themselves in school, they will need to go home. And so, you know, but not probably every day, but they will need to go home. That's how we're going to optimize things. But there's a lot of effort in our timeline. There's a lot of things that we're putting in place. If you look at that timeline to ensure that the equipment stays together for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Right,
the other question then with that on that same line then would be, would we be then collecting them again at the end of the school year to bring them in and, I don't know, refurbish or refresh them from potential damage that may have taken place during the course of the school year? I mean,
I wouldn't wait till the end of the year. I need to check on them at least every 2 weeks and see what the status of them are. Because if we wait till the end of the year, we're not going to be able, manpower or people power wise to go through them. We need to check. And it's no different than what we do on a routine basis. Me to build those routines to just remind, hey, I like the way you take care of your machine. Oh, what happened to this machine? And then we just work and educate the staff,
right.
Work and educate the students. We will not wait till the end of the year to collect them.
All right. So if that's the case, what's the insurance policy and what is the cost of the deductible to us for the completely damaged machines?
Great question. $32 over 3 years.
Oh.
So $96?
$32 divided by 3.
Over.
$10.
Oh, over. So basically, okay. So you're basically talking $10 a year.
$1 a month. Less than $1 a month.
I wish I had got that on my kid's computer that we just bought them.
And that replaces the computer completely?
If it needs to be replaced, yes. If the glass is broken or scratched or whatever, we replace the glass. If the keyboards are cherry picked, like the removal of the letter J and the K or the Q, That will something we can replace with parts within our department. But that is the accidental damage plan that Chris talked about a little while ago.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Accidental. That's accidental. What about non-accidental stuff?
We'll
That's a
assume
great-
it's all accidental.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
We do have stock right now. So if it does get, say, if it's not accidental, we can pull out another machine of like kind, maybe not the same manufacturer, but like kind, and provide it to the student.
Okay. Full disclosure, my daughter has thrown her Chromebook against a wall, but it's still working. So
Well, see,
that was an
yeah,
accidental throw.
but I could see that, because that would have been me as a kid. I forget that I have my computer in my backpack, and I'm going out to recess before school starts, and I just take my backpack and check it against the wall. I admit I would totally have been that kid. I'm almost that kid today at dang near 50. So I could only imagine what would happen, once we get a few computers into the hands of, some 7 and 8 year olds coming to school each day. Now, the other question that I would have is that obviously going into this, into our distance learning unexpectedly as we have, I would imagine that we did not currently have enough computers on hand to be able to get them into the hands of all of our students, correct?
No, not correct. We do. As I mentioned to the team, that we had an inventory done at the end of May of 2019, and we concluded we had 7,200 computers of Chromebook variety, almost 1-to-1, back in May.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So there was no real need then for us to go out and to purchase computers in preparation for distance learning to be able to pass out to all of our kids.
That's a fact. That is a fact. There is a need after June 30th, 2020.
Right, because 3,200 of them are going to be obsolete.
Yeah, President
Gotcha.
Jackson, just over time, when I first came on the board, we had set a goal of 1-to-1. And I believe, and so I think that was huge effort from the district to get to 1-to-1. The other thing I kind of want to put out there for the board's consideration is that we don't know what next school year will look like, and I don't want to scare the public. But the governor has been very clear that school will not look like the way it is. So I am guessing that there might be an increased need for Chromebooks and the distance learning at home at these various grade levels that will continue to be a need. I know it seems like a lot, but I think looking into the future, beyond our intention years ago to get to 1-to-1, that this is something that we need to consider for 2020, 2021. So
right. No, I agree with that, and thank you for bringing that up. Go ahead, Marcos.
So let me just ask this. I know we've all been on the Google system now. Is Google the cheapest product right now?
Cheaper than Apple.
It is the most reliable and most scalable solution that we have found. We're accustomed to Windows. Most of our careers are based on Windows and supporting Apples. Those systems are not as reliable and scalable for the population, and not only from a technology perspective, but nation perspective. When the PARC and the SBAC groups came out and to do online testing, they standardize on Google Chrome.
So are we focusing this on based on standardized testing? Is that why we're doing this with Google?
We cannot ignore standardized testing.
I'm not saying that we can ignore it. I'm just saying, are there other products that are producing this that do it in a more cost-effective manner? I'm just thinking out loud, and I want to know, because personally, my Apple product is I've had it for almost 11 years and it still works. So I have the district issue iPad that had absolutely zero connectivity problems while the Chromebooks couldn't get on this week. So, the iPad seemed to be doing just fine. So I'm just curious because from what I hear, Chromebooks aren't exactly the greatest. And I was just wondering.
So, Michael, so are you referring to the Chromebooks themselves, Kobe, or are you referring to the system
not the software,
operating
because the
system?
software I think is similar everywhere. I'm thinking about the hardware.
Well, because okay, I see what you're saying. So then specifically in talking about the Chromebook itself, the computer, the Chromebook, versus say like the Lenovo that I almost bought that I bought my daughters for Christmas.
Right.
If I were to buy my daughters one for Christmas, like a Lenovo or like an HP,
An
where
Acer,
I could run Google
or an Acer or whatever.
An
Right.
Acer, or something like that.
So I'm wondering in procurement, Marco, and that the question is that given the hardware, were Chromebooks the most cost-effective and scalable, or was there a more cost-effective way to go with an Acer or Lenovo or an IBM device or whatever to scale?
Great question. Chromebook is made by HP, Acer, Dell, Lenovo. They also make Windows machines. The Windows machine variety of device is beefier and it comes at a higher price. No different than when you go with Apple. When you go with the lesser processor, and I won't get too technical, but you're buying a machine that's $398, so we want to extend the life for 5 years. If you buy an Apple, you need to buy a MacBook that's going to cost you maybe $1,200. Yes, so it'll last you 5-7 years. They will last you. Yeah. So this is the best solution for the amount of funds that we have to meet the needs of the district and state as well, state testing and the curriculum that we've been adopting.
So what's the alternative then? If we decided not to go with this today?
We'll be in a difficult position. We don't have the funds, from when we talked, and Chris can jump in, to go above what we are proposing here. So this has worked for the district for multiple years and other districts for multiple years as well. And it's going to be a viable solution for the next 4 to 5 years too.
So I guess my question is, what's the consequence of not buying it? Might be the question of Vice President Pizzati, and that's a curriculum question that Director Moisich, I think you can answer.
Sure, I can tell you that it would be a really huge cost. I'm not even going to think about talking about it in terms of the future if we go into a distance learning type of situation in the fall. I think that is very self-explanatory. But I'm just going to kind of go at it from in terms of what regular school typically is before March 13th. At some point next fall, our units will be obsolete and the systems won't work. You heard, our IT director mentioned that earlier. And then when that happens, our teachers are going to struggle with how to accessing the curriculum for their students. Doesn't mean they can't do things paper and pencil, but I'm going to go back to the point I made earlier about digital necessity. And yes, we can do things paper and pencil, but that is going to have a serious impact on the way what teachers can do in the classroom. And I don't see that as an option at all.
You mean like using a book like we did in the olden days?
Well, using the
when
book
you had hair, Vice President Pizzati, yes.
I'm just gonna go back to digital necessity is kind of the world we live in. But I will throw out also that under our state testing, obligations, that would be a problem too. But for me, the biggest problem is our students a huge amount of our students wouldn't have access to something that is tantamount to being college and career ready these days. And
Gotcha.
that's the issue for me.
Gotcha.
Particularly in a district that has 2/3 of our students at socioeconomically disadvantaged.
Gotcha. I hear that.
I get that.
I hear that. Dr. Director Moisich, I hear that. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I get that. I think what I'm kind of looking at is the 5-year cost of this program, when Chris always tells us he likes to do 3 years plus 2 in our budgeting. You're encumbering a great deal of money
We actually
every year.
We actually aren't, Kobe. We're showing you an illustration of what it would be over a 7-year period of time.
Right.
So
But-
the money's not covered. Every school budget is year to year, and so before the next big adoption, if the contract were canceled, it would take 2 years to wind down. So we are just illustrating for the board what the annual cost would be. But you're right. If we start going in this direction, and I've talked to Marco and Stan about this, it becomes an entitlement.
Cancel it.
Yeah, it becomes an expectation unless there's something new out there, and so it is basically a $700,000 a year cost after year 5.
Right, exactly, and we ran into this problem before when we started encumbering a year-over-year thing when we did the high school and Stonegate on developer fees. We didn't have the money to pay that. So I'm just saying, I'm looking at this. You're right. We do need to buy computers. I totally agree with that. And we need to put devices into kids' hands. I'm a little concerned with, how we're going about doing this. I'm really concerned with the fact that, they license us at 5 years max. That's shocking. And it's hard for me to accept, I guess, and I'm trying to get over it.
Yeah, I think
get over it.
the developer, get over it. President Jackson said just get over it because it's about equity for our kids, right? So I think the developer fee is different because I think we assumed I don't know. I think there was a perception that there was a revenue kind of generation in that.
Well, at least it was a permanent structure that we get to keep, right? That's the difference.
Well, I think that they're kind of similar, but really different things and funding.
So
I think that in budgeting, and Chris helped me understand that this is actually, we have a curriculum budget every single year that's pretty much about over $1 million, right? Like if I remember the budgets correctly, that since I've been on the board and looking before I came on the board, that there's always about $1 million or so plus in that curriculum line item.
It's actually quite a bit higher than that. It is
quite a bit.
One of our biggest line items. And to your point, we are not financing something like a structure. Trustee Pizzotti is absolutely correct. But we are doing a pay as you go. So we're paying for the devices that we need for that year and the next 5 years every year. If I had the money, the extra money just to outright purchase them, which we did look at, it was more upfront money over a 3-year purchase period, and we just simply can't afford it. So leasing, and this is where most school districts fall, leasing becomes the option. And we looked at a lot of scenarios. I was actually getting frustrated with the number of scenarios and the variance in them. This is the most fiscally prudent option. It is cancelable any given year.
But it's really not. It's really not.
The time that this will end, Trustee Pizzotti, is when there's something else besides Chromebooks that dominate the field. At this point, Chromebooks are dominating the educational field. That's just the reality we're dealing with.
Or that another board decides that they don't want to have equitable access to devices for our student population, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's the issue, though. I don't think that's the issue, Jackie. I think that it's more about, the hard pill to swallow, though, is the commitment of multi-year to a device that's only going to last 5 years, when we know for a fact they can last longer. They're just telling you, we're not going to allow you to last them longer, and that's the part that I have a problem with.
Yeah, but that's entire industry. Everybody, unless we had the money to triple our budget to do it. It doesn't seem like we do every single year, right?
Yeah, we can't get mad at the business model.
We can't.
The business model is what it is. You can tell me what I can get mad at. You can get mad. No, you're right. You can get mad about it. It's not going to change it, but yeah, you can get mad about it. So basically, Chromebook is basically because think about it. They're following the old Apple playbook, right? Whereas Apple was the first ones to, when they really started to take off again, is when they started putting the old, what was the old bubble-looking thing? The old bubble-looking computers with all the funny pretty colors on it. The Macs back on.
iMacs.
It became the computer.
iMac.
Yeah, the iMac when that came back out, and that became the device of choice. But then of course they diversified and became more of a camera company and a cell phone company more than a computer company, and they got out and they dropped that model.
Okay.
So
I appreciate you can't get mad at the business model. I appreciate that, President Jackson.
yeah, I mean, I don't like it either, but you know, it is what it is. So I guess I left my other spot.
I don't know. I know we've been over talking. I don't know if Trustee Alcala, you have any comments? I feel like the three of us have been talking a lot.
No, it's fine. I've just been listening. I mean, there's a lot to take in. But I have confidence that, you know, the course that our cabinet members are taking is the correct one.
I agree. It's
Yeah,
it's hard to swallow. Business model is hard to swallow, but I think it's the right direction as well.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that too. I mean, it doesn't help when you're a district like ours, or like any school district for that matter, where obviously funds are extremely limited, but yet and still you're being asked to do more in an ecosystem that you necessarily weren't designed for, in terms of, you know, utilizing this much technology in the classroom, but yet and still your employer, or I should say your budgeteer, meaning the state, is not giving you the resources you need in order to be able to put you in the best situation possible. I mean, that's an issue in and of itself that needs to be addressed. So,
if discussion's done, I move to approve, unless there's more comments to be made.
I second.
okay, so moved to approve H4 by Trustee Wong and seconded by Trustee Alcala. Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Alcala?
Aye.
Trustee Wong?
Aye.
Vice President Pizzati? That would be you, Colby.
Begrudgingly, aye. I was on mute.
We saw your face though. We weren't sure.
I also vote aye. So action item H4 is approved. So with that, we need to go ahead and go back to our whole
Thank you.
consent items. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work, and thank you for filling our one-to-one kind of plan over the years.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, because like I said, the reason why I even questioned that initially is because I know, like for the last couple of years, I know Bridgeway has gone out. They've gone out and they've purchased a number of different computer carts for different classrooms and things like that. So, which kind of led me to believe that we weren't at the one-to-one. So it's good, and I'm very pleasantly surprised and pleased to hear that we are at that point in this district, which is huge kudos to you all. So yeah, that's fantastic.
And I'd be remiss to not acknowledge all of our PTOs for supporting that as well. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
I wanted to acknowledge them for helping us fulfill the dream. Yeah.
No, without question. I mean, the community has done a great job in supporting our kids in terms of trying to get as much technology in their hands as possible, and so that's a huge compliment to the folks in our community and the community of West Sacramento in general. So. With that, we'll go back to our pulled consent agenda items. G10, the approval of the agreement for bond counsel services. Chris, you're up.
So the approval for, excuse me, bond counsel services is in preparation if the board does decide to go for a bond. Bond counsel already has to be working at this time to interface with the county to make sure that they have the timeline in place in the event that we do decide to put a bond on the ballot, to get the language on the ballot, to prepare it legally and appropriately, et cetera. This is the same bond counsel that the district has used for its past two bonds. However, bond counsel does not receive any payment. It is a conditional contract. They only receive payment not only if you decide to put the bond on the ballot, but if the bond is approved, then bond counsel receives payment. So they do not work for any money until bond is issued. But we have to do that in preparation so that the option is still open to the board.
President Jackson, can I ask sequentially, and maybe it's makes more sense to talk about G11 before G10? That's our political strategist contract.
Oh, okay.
I'm open.
If it does, I don't
a
know.
little bit reversed.
Well, I mean, why don't we
together.
let Trustee Alcala make the comment? I mean, she's the one who pulled it. So.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, this is my concern. I was all in favor of a bond as well, but in light of what's happening with the economy right now, I don't think the public would be in favor of it. So even to start the initial steps, I think is premature at this point. One of the comments made was, we still have to see the governor's May revise. I'd like to wait until that time before we, move further with this. Those are the reasons I pull this aside for discussion, because I think at this point, until we know more what's happening with our economy, I think it's just premature to take these steps right now.
Yeah, I hear your concerns, and I think under normal circumstances, I probably would agree. But I think considering the current environment, that is maybe something that we should still go ahead and proceed, because guess what? Things aren't going to necessarily get any better right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we do move forward with it, and if we do place it, and these are all ifs, and if the bond is approved, that doesn't mean that we necessarily need to start drawing the funds on that bond right away. We still have time to be able to plan and prepare, and keep in mind that, like as Chris has said time and time again, that the costs are just going to continue to escalate and get higher and higher and higher for the things that we're looking to accomplish with the bond. And I understand where everyone's coming from. I understand, I understand Pat Flint's comments and Danny Langford's comments and and the other comments that were made tonight during public comment about the issuance of the bond at this time. In my opinion, to me, it just seems like it might even be, it's even more of a reach and to more or less move forward than not. Vice President Pizzotti.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything that this crisis has taught us, is that there's more need now than ever, especially when it comes to bandwidth and technology. And I would say that I understand that this may not be an appealing time, and it may be a big ask for the constituents to approve a bond. However, what's your alternative? You wait. So you issue the bond now, you go to November, you go to the ballot. We're not going to even see the funds for that for 2 years. That puts you at 2022 before you can even look at the funds or even go out to get the funds. If we wait for another 2 years, that means 2024. So that's 4 more years of our kids who are in the most, run down schools can be, that's 4 more of being in the most rundown schools and staying in the most rundown schools, having our teachers teach in the most rundown schools. And these are the communities that have the least. That's why I think we have to do something now. It's almost, I think, neglectful for us if we don't try, if we don't at least try.
I would agree with you. Because at that point it becomes a value add for our community. Hey, the community needs to make a determination. Well, what's important? And that then becomes the job of, well, not the district, because we can't go out and advocate for, in favor, or against the bond in the first place. However, we can, the people that we put in, that we give that charge to, that then becomes their responsibility to make sure that the proper message is conveyed to the public in emphasizing and stressing the importance of the bond at even given the times that we're in. Because there's never a perfect time. Even if none of this had ever happened, it still wasn't a perfect time. Why? Because we just had one on the March ballot that didn't pass. There's still going to be another one on the November ballot.
Mm-hmm.
So the timing's never going to be perfect. It's almost like, the time if you try and time to have a kid or whatever.
Right.
The timing's never perfect.
Yeah.
But are you
sorry,
going to move forward if that's something that you want?
Yeah, I second that. I think about the families who showed up on the north side, and even when they said that, we spent so much of our resources on the south side, and how we needed to actually invest in our, quite frankly, dilapidated schools, our oldest campuses that got no love, right? I think about those families who were moved. I think about the projects that we created just to beautify. And that's what I think about. And the fact that we could kick this down the road, I think would not really honor the voices of our promise to actually really finally create equity to our north side schools, right? That, in a way that honors the tradition and the history of West Sacramento and Washington Unified. I also think that, but also on process that we haven't done any polling, and I feel like that's why I said G11 might be a little bit like G10 is if the bond comes, but G11 I think is really the critical conversation. I know that we're not there, President Jackson, but at least just to do some polling so that we actually have some advice.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think it does a disservice to our north side families who came out in droves or have been talking to me and others about the need to update those campuses.
Yeah.
President Jackson,
no, I agree. Yes, go ahead, Trustee Alcoa.
Yes, I was just going to say, I know how hard, I remember walking alongside Sarah Kirby Gonzalez. We walked a lot of neighborhoods to get, the previous bond passed. So I guess it's been one of my concerns. Those were better times. We were able to get out there. We were able to advocate. And right now, I guess I just find that, being, unable to get out there to do the outreach that we do, it wouldn't be the same thing. Perhaps we do need, as you said, what was it? Is it H11? I'm sorry, G11 to find out polling, because obviously we can, facilitate that through, our emails and other electronic avenues. But I just have real concerns because there are businesses out there that are failing. And of course, I would be very much in favor of a bond. If anything, I know that our schools on this side, of West Sacramento are greatly in need. We all want that. I just feel that right now the timing is so bad, and I'm so afraid that if we put this bond out there, folks are going to be hurting, and that this bond will fail. So that's one of the concerns I had. But I hear what all of you were saying. I want that too. I'm just putting this out there that perhaps now is not the time, because I almost feel it's like a sure failure. And then I'm also asking maybe we just wait off until we hear the May revise, and then we just bring this back up.
I would say you have 100% failure rate of things you don't try, and that's my kind of mentality on this.
I know, but there are a lot of folks that... Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there are a lot of folks out there that I know they're going to see this and they're going to say, "Are you crazy? We can't afford this anymore. We're losing houses out here. Can't even pay our bills." I mean, I'm lucky. I don't have those worries right now. Some of us don't. But when you see families out there who are voting on this, people on limited incomes, it's just for me not the right time. But I will respect what the rest of the board members feel on this. I'm just throwing that out there because I have heard a lot of other concerns
So,
from people who
board-
call. Yeah.
add a couple points of clarification for everybody. Currently, you are not trying to vote on moving forward with the bond or not. So tonight's 2 items after direction from the board to move forward with the surveying. So Godby's been approved, and the approval of these 2 items just allows us to move forward with the surveying to get the type of temperature that Trustee Alcala is mentioning. So this just moves us ahead with that step of the process. And just also for clarification, for the November bond in Yolo County, we actually have to have draft language in by June. So I have to get the polling done to give you that temperature now, because if it, whichever way the polling turns out, I don't have a crystal ball, but whatever way it turns out, I still need time to get whatever language you want on the actual ballot. And in Yolo County, that's by the end of June.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Thank
The email with the dates all prescribed on it. So
yeah.
So for clarification, this is Chris. This would just start the polling. That's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we approved the polling because of direction from the board previously, and it was on consent. And then this, Jared and his group and the bond council have already been working because the polling can't be constructed without their input. So direction from the board was to go ahead. It just took me a while to get their contract worked out, which is why it's showing up on consent tonight, because they've already been working with the pollster to get the polling together. So this does not put the bond on the ballot. What it does is it authorizes the work they've already actually done. So it ratifies the work they've done on the poll. And then we are going to start the poll immediately so that we can get the board that information so they can make an informed decision about the bond.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarification, Chris, could you tell us how much we are paying for this service?
I believe TBWBH is $6,500 a month. We started engaging them directly after they presented to you with Godby. I believe that was back in, gosh, guys, I'm sorry, I apologize. I think it was February.
Yeah, it was February.
I believe it was February.
I'm pretty sure it was February.
So they've been on for a month and 8 days, something like that.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. Well, with that explanation, I'm going to withdraw my reservations then.
It will come back to the board after you have the survey information.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Hey,
Vice President Pizzotti.
yeah, I remember looking over the poll questions. I think, I hate to say it, but given the times, I think there needs to be a poll question added about the bandwidth and the importance of connectivity. That I don't know. I mean, this is something that we're learning through being in distance learning. That's something that I think that needs to be addressed. And I hope that there's some education being done in the poll on this issue specifically. Superintendent Luna.
President Jackson, Superintendent Luna is raising her hand.
Yeah.
FYI.
Oh, she is? I don't even see her on my screen. But yeah, go right ahead.
I just turned myself off. Okay. So thank you for making those remarks, Vice President Pizzotti. And I took it, we had a quick strategic meeting with Brian Godby, and we added some questions in regards to infrastructure and bandwidth for technology.
Good.
And they also elude, there is a question that actually has COVID-19 in it.
Good.
So that we get a real-time response of the 500 polls that they're going to do.
Okay. That's good, because I mean, part of what polling is also educating. So I think if we educate about the problems of connectivity that we're having in terms of bandwidth, then I think that also helps lead the conversation. So
yeah.
With that, can I? Well, I guess we're just on G10. Are we doing G10 and G11 as one fell swoop?
I believe that would be up to Trustee Alcala.
Let's do it individually. Let's just do it individually, so we don't have any, because they're individual votes, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they would be.
So I move.
So I second.
G10.
For G10?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Roll call vote. Trustee Alcala?
Aye.
Trustee Wong?
Aye.
Vice President Pizzotti? And I also vote aye for the approval of G10, which is the agreement of bond counsel services. G11, the approval of the attached agreement with alphabet soup, TBWBH for bond political strategy.
I'll move G11.
I second.
Okay, moved by Vice President Pizzotti, seconded by Trustee Wong. All right, so again, roll call vote. Vice President Pizzotti.
Aye.
Trustee Wong.
Aye.
Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
And I also vote aye for the approval of G11. Okay, so again, but with clarification that these approvals do not commit us to putting a bond on the ballot. It just merely continues our fact-finding process as to the viability of putting said bond on the potentially putting said bond on the November ballot.
Thank you for
Thank you, Trustee.
clarification.
We'll get you the survey information once it's complete. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. All right. Board governance. There are no board governance at this meeting. So we'll move down to J, board and superintendent comments. Did I lose everybody?
No, you have to tell us who's going first. President Jackson, you have to tell us who's going first. Second, third, fourth.
Everything just went like dead silent for a second.
We were waiting for your lead, sir. You have that much control over us, sir.
Now you just pressed.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Again, what are we doing?
I said Superintendent Luna.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, President Jackson. I really don't have any comments this evening except to really thank the staff for all their incredible work during this very difficult time. I think even though we have been in school closure for about a month now, I think we are just beginning to feel some of the effects of the weariness, of the emotional, just the emotional strain that the whole situation has upon staff who have been working tirelessly to try to just get systems in place during this emergency time. So I just want to give a thanks and a word of gratitude and appreciation for all the staff who have really stepped up to the plate, and that's at all levels across the district. It's been amazing. So thank you very much.
Right, great. Thank you for that, Superintendent Luna. Trustee Alcala.
Thank you. I also want to thank all the staff, all the teachers, and all our food service employees, just everyone for pulling together. And I have to tell you, I was heartbroken to hear about that student who was shot on Todd Hunter. You know, this is such a difficult time for everyone. And, you know, when we see a loss of a young life like that, it's so unbearable. You want to reach out to, you know, to people in the community and be able to talk with them. And we've been so limited with being able to do this. So, you know, just my prayer is that, you know, the family, you know, is given strength during this really difficult time, and that the rest of our students are kept safe. I believe that's about all. I want to thank Trustee Jackie Wong for getting us all together to make that video that was sent out to our community. I got some really cute responses from it. And I also want to say that I was looking forward so much this year to watching some of our students Into the Woods, I believe was the name of the play. I was looking forward to seeing, and I still have my tickets up there. So hopefully next year will be a year when we can enjoy once again watching our students, in the play fields and in the theater and all kinds of competitions. But until then, I just hope everyone stays safe. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Wong.
Yeah, I also want to thank all of our governance team for bearing with me on my little journey of kind of video a montage, if you will. Really, it was really fun seeing you all do that, and fun to do that. I also want to thank all of the staff during this time, because I know that everyone's been impacted, and folks have experienced hospitalizations and deaths in this community, and so really understand, appreciate Superintendent Luna, your comments. I also appreciate that you actually you and staff have engaged in a conversation with Yolo County mental health services and supports to address the other kind of needs that we're not talking about. We are talking a lot about distance learning, but the social emotional in a real way. When our students may not be in safe situations, and working with Yolo County on providing a training, if you will, in these upcoming months to develop a system of supports when they are not able to talk to our outreach workers and social workers' lives. So I want to kind of acknowledge that work and that is before us, and thank you all for in this time of keeping equity at the forefront. I've had the pleasure of talking to several school board members over the course of the month, and they're really always really impressed that we are the first to do a training with CPS. We're the first to be one-to-one. We're the first to have distributed 4,600 computers, because it's a testament to our staff's capabilities and leadership. That I am just really proud to serve as a governance member. And it's in times of crisis we see our strengths, and it's not that we were scrambling. It's that, as I said before we decided to close, that we were prepared, and the evidence of that just shows. And I am so grateful for all of you to making sure that our students and families get what they need in a really timely manner. So appreciate that. That's it for me.
Vice President Pizzati.
Yeah, I also wanted to thank our staff and our fellow board members for all our hard work, and the teachers, and especially the food service workers. They really, they are out there doing the work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and handing out meals to everybody. We go and pick ours up, and I just can't say enough good things about them. I also wanted to echo some of the comments made earlier at the start of the meeting by President Jackson about Trustee Kirby Gonzalez's father. We all got to meet him when Sarah was sworn in last election cycle, and you could see him beaming with pride. And that's kind of a mark of a good man, when he's able to raise a great daughter. And I think that's something that you can see in Sarah. And I think my heart and my prayers and everything go out to their family, because I can only imagine how hard that is right now. I'd also like to say, so on a separate note, I have heard a lot of concerns from parents that there's been issues with different grades doing different things, different teachers doing different things within the same grade. And I know that I've kind of been wanting my daughter's teacher to use Zoom as a method of connecting. It doesn't have to be a classroom, but as a method of connecting, so that for someone like my daughter, where structure is really important, it would serve her well because she's really missing her teacher right now. She's missing her classmates. And that's something that I think there's no way we're going to be able to replace. It's, this time has given my wife and I both, meltdowns because of, the problems that we're dealing with trying to become teachers while working and, trying to entertain, an 8-year-old. All the while, not to mention her challenges. So the issues are the struggle is real, so to speak. And I'd just like to see some consistency with how this is being utilized, because I'm seeing some teachers, doing all the work themselves and others not. I just want to see something, and I don't know what that is. And I wish I had a better understanding of what the structure was like. But I know it's evolving, and I know it's going to change. But I just hope we get to we get to find that out sooner rather than later.
Thank you for that. Well, I will say again, to echo everyone else's sentiments, is that a very heartfelt thank you and appreciation to our staff, from the food service down to technology, and everything in between, and to Superintendent Luna and your cabinet. You guys, I think for me, it's interesting to be able to see things from two different perspectives, from this perspective on the board side, and then from the teacher perspective in the district that I work. And just to see the two differences for me is just it's mind blowing. We're here. I feel like the district and the teachers have worked very collaboratively to try and establish a system and have established a system and protocols of how things are to be done. To where I'm at, where I think my particular school, we're doing a good job of that. I mean, I know my coworkers and I, we meet or talk at least weekly about what we're going to be doing for the up and coming week. Now, whether or not it gets done or not, different story. But it's good to see the parties involved here working together as well as you guys have, and I very much appreciate that. And a huge appreciation goes out to our teachers. I know, trust me, I know that this is not an easy thing to do, to have to change the way that you teach at a moment's notice, like we have been asked to do here in the last few weeks. But it is definitely appreciated. I know my daughter's teachers in particular, she has gone, in my opinion, above and beyond in making sure that the kids have things to do every single day. She has them on a schedule. Some people may argue that it may be a little bit too much, which I get. I think the thing that my daughters have working in their favor is that both of their parents are educators, and so we're actually able to kind of to dissect things a little bit better and help kind of keep them on track and keep them going. But unfortunately, not everyone has that advantage, and so I can see how it can be kind of overwhelming for some families, and I completely understand that. And I think if our teachers are willing to, or hopefully our teachers are giving our kids the grace that they need moving forward with things, and just making sure and trying as best we can to make sure that we're doing as best we possibly can to educate our kids, that would be a tremendous help to help relieve some of the pressure and off of some of our parents who may be beginning to feel a little bit overwhelmed, as I can see in Vice President Pizotti's face. But understand this, is that even with that, regardless of what happens, or regardless of what's taking place, our kids are going to be okay, because our kids are resilient. Kids are some of the most resilient creatures on the face of the planet. And regardless of where they are, regardless of where they may finish up this year, moving forward, as long as we continue to give them the love and the support that they need, they're going to be fine. And the special shout out and thank you to Marco and the and IT, because I know the first day of distance learning, trying to get kids online, like Google Classroom and things like that, was an absolute mess. I don't think my kids even got on the first day because things were so kind of screwed up. But it's refreshing to see the very next day all those problems had been solved and all those bugs have been worked out. And so I want to thank them for that. And one thing I did have a question. If someone, I don't know, Superintendent, you may have the answer to this, but do we have a way for parents or for the community to get in touch with IT should there be issues? Because, like, for example, I thought it was just something problem that we're having at my house on Monday, where we couldn't get on anything at all with the Chromebooks. And it wasn't until I saw Vice President Pizzotti's post on Facebook that I realized, okay, it wasn't just us. It appeared, it turns out it looked like it was a Chromebook issue, but it would have been nice if we, if there was a way that, hey, if parents are having issues with technology stuff, that there's a way that they can get in contact with someone from the district to help troubleshoot things like that. I think that would be a huge help as well. I know it seems like almost every day we have some little kind of bug or something like that takes us some time to kind of figure out before we can get everything worked out. But nonetheless, I appreciate the work that everyone's doing, and I thank you guys for all the hard work. And like I said, we're going to be okay. Whoops. All right. So with that, we'll move on to K, future board agenda items. K1, policy updates, dress code to be determined. K2, moms demand action, information presentation requested, still to be determined. K3, local account control accountability, update and local indicators to be determined. K4, board governance and norms review. Okay. Are there any other future board agenda items?
President Jackson, this is Trustee Wong. I'm just wondering, and I don't know if it's a policy update, but graduation ceremonies. I think I know a lot of the community are wondering about if there's something the district can do for graduation, and this is your opportunity to give a speech, President Jackson. But what does that look like for our seniors, and then also our 8th graders who are promoting? So the folks, kind of those ceremonies that are so critical in our process here. So just wanting to see if there's if that's a policy update or kind of something else via email about what plans might be taking place to honor our rising, 8th graders and our graduating seniors.
Right.
Yeah. So we currently have. We currently are in discussions on that right now. We've received some feedback of what people would like to do. What we're trying to do is of course honor our students while under these particular circumstances. So we will not wait until May 14th to give the board an update, which is our next meeting. We will definitely have plans in place soon. And we will make sure that the board is informed prior to us announcing it to the public.
Okay. Great. Anything else for future board agenda items? Thank you for that, Trustee Wong, by the way. I know that's been on the minds of a lot of people. What are we going to do about commencement ceremonies and things like that? So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In my mind, it's also a historical moment for you, President Jackson. I want to acknowledge. Everybody has to go through the nervousness of that.
Come on, you're talking to the guy who basically went up to give his high school graduation speech with blank 3x5 cards. Okay. No, thank you. Actually, I've been kind of working on that since January, so I appreciate that. All right, with somebody needs to change their smoke alarm battery. I can hear it chirping in the background. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Vice President Pizzotti. Do I have a second?
I second.
second by Trustee Long. All those in favor? Well, sorry, roll call vote.
Roll call.
Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
Trustee Long.
Aye.
Vice President Pizzotti.
Aye.
And as much as I may want to stay online with you guys, I too vote aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Don't
everybody.
don't forget to log off.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you.